Chapter 1133. Qin Yining laughed self-deprecatingly. Boss Chiu, please don't blame me. I'm just being nosy. Qiu Feishan shook her head. Princess Consort and Wang Yi must have their own ways to get along. It's my honor that you're willing to tell me, how can I blame you? I'm just a little disappointed. Qin Yining said, Master Mu is from a famous sect, and his martial arts are outstanding. Perhaps he's not as resourceful as you, nor as wealthy as you, but he rarely meets a match in the martial arts world, and has a mysterious sect behind him. Boss Chiu is a proud daughter of the heavens, and has been superior since young. But perhaps Boss Chiu has forgotten that when husband and wife get along, they don't care about whose family background, high or low status, what they care about is the relationship and equality. Qiu Feishan only felt that Qin Yining's words stabbed at her heart, but she couldn't refute. She carefully reflected on herself, she was indeed too self-righteous. In her heart, she had always treated Mu Jinghu as a martial artist who could be easily manipulated. However, she did not expect that this martial artist had a very stubborn personality. She had accidentally hurt this person's heart. Qiu Feishan shook her head. Princess Consort's words are very pertinent. I made a mistake first. Now, it's too late to redeem myself. Qin Yining saw that Qiu Feishan's attitude was good, and her words were very honest, so he said, Master Mu values friendship the most. In fact, if Boss Chiu is willing to face the problem, this matter won't be difficult to solve. But I've already moved him emotionally, and I even brought up Brother Yan. Qin Yining shook his head. He's angry because you deceived and used him. He felt that his sincerity was exchanged for a lie. If Boss Chiu only uses the child as the reason, I'm afraid this knot won't be resolved. Boss Chiu, you've been on the same boat for 10 years, you still have to cherish your fate. Qiu Feishan looked down thoughtfully, and after a while, she nodded. Her voice was a little low. I understand. I need to face my own problems, I need to apologize to him, and ask for his forgiveness, and not blindly let him understand me. Because I can see from my observations that he won't understand me. Suddenly looking at Qin Yining, Qiu Feishan said, but to be honest, I don't think I did anything wrong, everything I did was for his good. I believe that since Princess Consort is willing to talk to me here, she also understands this point. Qin Yining smiled and nodded. That's right, I do understand. Moreover, the reason why I can speak to you so calmly is because you are not someone to me. I did not place any hopes on you, so I was not disappointed. What about young Master Mu? Qiu Feishan suddenly raised her head and met Qin Yining's eyes that seemed to be able to see through everything. Her heart seemed to be in a perilous situation. Perhaps it was just as Qin Yining had said. This was the crux of the problem. Come to think of it, she did not apologize to Mu Jinghu because she did not think that she was in the wrong. If she wanted to get Mu Jinghu back, she had to do something. But the more Qiu Feishan thought about it, the more she felt wronged. Could it be that the reason she developed and strengthened the Qiu family was not for her and Mu Jinghu? Was it not for their child? Some things were indeed very important, but the most important thing should always be one's own interests. Perhaps this was the difference between her and Mu Jinghu. This man was always emotional. Qin Yining saw that Qiu Feishan's expression changed a few times, looking very troubled and conflicted, so he did not say anything more. Since he had already said it, he had already told Qiu Feishan the problem she had seen. In fact, he had already done his duty. Because Qiu Feishan did not only use and deceive Mu Jinghu, but she and Pang Xiao were open-minded and would not cause any trouble because of this. She was willing to talk to Qiu Feishan about this today, in fact, because of Mu Jinghu. The carriage slowly drove into the city, until it reached the entrance of an alley. There was only one house in the alley, the door was open at this time, and Master Zhong was waiting with a few accompanying bodyguards with a smile. Seeing that Qin Yining had arrived, everyone bowed in unison. Princess Consort. Qin Yining smiled. Fortunately, Master Zhong came in advance and bought a house, so we did not have to find a suitable place to live here. As he spoke, Ji Yun and Bing Tang had already helped Qin Yining out of the carriage. Buying also helped Xiao Fei Shan out of the carriage. After hearing Qin Yining's words, Xiao Fei Shan knew that the trust between her and Qin Yining no longer existed. The house that she had previously arranged to be given to Qin Yining did not even care about Qin Yining. She was not angry or wronged, but she was disappointed. Coupled with the reasons that Qin Yining had mentioned, Xiao Fei Shan felt that even if she had been in the business world for many years, she still felt that this was a difficult problem. Fortunately, Qin Yining did not hide his residence. He had also generously brought her to the door, which more or less showed that Qin Yining could go hand in hand at this stage when they had a common goal. This could be considered as one of the things that had happened today that made her feel gratified. "Boss Chiu, please come in and have a cup of tea with us. Then I will disturb Princess Consort." Xiao Fei Shan abandoned all idle thoughts. She could be sentimental, but she knew what she had to do now. Only by defeating the alliance between Taiden and Lu Heng could the Chiu family take a more stable route in the court, and their future development would be more stable. The Chiu family had been dormant for 100 years, although they were of the same breadth and branch as the Lu family, and had the same bloodline. After such a long time, they were already two different surnames, two different families. The Chiu family did not want to silently hide in the corner anymore, and it was time to switch places with the Lu family. However, she did not know if Lu Heng would have the strength to remain dormant after the Lu family was destroyed by Li Qitian. Xiao Fei Shan followed Qin Yining to the front hall, and her lips could not help but curl up into a faint smile as she pondered in the letter. Qin Yining turned back to look at her, and saw her confident smile. He vaguely felt that Xiao Fei Shan must have thought of a good way to solve the problem between her and Mu Jinghu, so he did not say anything more, and just chatted with her. After chatting for a while, the two of them became more intimate, and Xiao Fei Shan once again mentioned her purpose. "Princess Consort, please listen to me. Wang Yi brought 280,000 soldiers to the South Pacifying Army to outflank the Taiden, and with Prince Consort Ji's original troops, the provisions provided by the court are not enough. The provisions allocated by the Emperor must be obtained by Prince Consort Ji, who is closer. Wang Yi still has to provide his own provisions. Princess Consort is clear about the financial resources of the four links. Now that it is the aftermath of the disaster, it will not be easy for Princess Consort to gather provisions. At this time, why does Princess Consort and Wang Yi insist on the past? Those who achieve great things do not care about trifles. If you want to defeat the Taiden, you must first let the South Pacifying Army eat their fill. This way, it will be more convenient for Wang Yi to do things, and it will be easier for him to convince the people. Princess Consort is a smart person, you should understand that I am not lying. Wang Yi has also gone to the front lines. Is Princess Consort not worried about Wang Yi's safety, and does not want Wang Yi to bring people to eat their fill before going to war?" Qin Yining smiled as he listened to Xiao Fei Shan's words, and could not help but sigh. It had to be said that Xiao Fei Shan's words were too tempting for her. She could not follow Pang Xiao to the battlefield, and the only thing she could do was to properly allocate provisions and military supplies. Her financial resources were limited, and her manpower was not as good as the four-way shop. If she had the help of the four-way shop, she would be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort. But even if they did not hate Xiao Fei Shan, did they not care about their self-esteem? Even if she could bow her head, Pang Xiao would definitely not bend. "I understand Boss Chou's intentions, and I am very moved. It's just that Wang Yi has his own principles, and he has already made arrangements, so I really can't intervene in this matter. I will pass on Boss Chou's good intentions." She actually refused again. Xiao Fei Shan frowned and said, "Princess Consort, Forgive me for being blunt, but I really understand your and Wang Ye's thoughts. Such a good thing, why do you have to repeatedly refuse? If the four-way shop wants to do this, it will not be a small amount. We also have good intentions. Qin Yining waved his hand to interrupt Qiu Feishan's words, and said with a smile, good intentions, good intentions, good intentions, these are not important. I am just a woman of the inner residence, and now I came to Golden Harbor to take care of the fetus. The matters on the battlefield, let the men do it. That was all. Qiu Feishan could not even find a reason to continue. If someone said that Qin Yining did not participate in the military provisions, she would not believe it even if she was beaten to death. But Qin Yining used this to brush her off, so she could not find anything to say. Qin Yining saw that Qiu Feishan's expression did not change, but there was anxiety in her eyes, and he understood. Why did the four-way shop have to fund the South Pacifying Army to attack the Titan? Why did they have to choose the team led by Pang Shao? It was nothing more than seeing that Pang Shao was a rare commodity worth hoarding, and they could have more backing in the future. Even if he wanted to eat, he had to have a way to do it. Qiu Feishan was still somewhat unwilling to leave, but in the end, seeing that Qin Yining was still unwilling to let go, she could only give up. She told Qin Yining her residence and the new location of the four-way shop in Golden Harbor, and then left first. Qin Yining ordered people to send her off, and he lay down on the chaise lounge by the window to rest. Bing Tang said, Wang Fei, why don't you let the four-way shop have its own initiative? Wang Yi can at least send it faster. Qin Yining slowly explained, some things, once started, can't be taken back. No matter what Wang Yi does in the future, we can't leave any evidence that can be used against us, and we can't let others have the opportunity to take advantage of us. Even if it's not easy to raise the provisions, we still have Mistress Ya. I believe that we can discuss it, and we won't let the South Pacifying Army starve. Bing Tang nodded in understanding. After Qiu Feishan left, she did not come to persuade him again. Qin Yining lived very comfortably, with Xiaoyu representing Pang Shao, and Master Zhong representing herself. Everything was done very smoothly, and she could rest at ease. However, 2 months later, the weather gradually became hot, and Master Zhong looked for Qin Yining with a dignified expression. Wang Fei. Qin Yining was 6 months pregnant, and was walking around the courtyard accompanied by Ji Yun and Bing Tang. Hearing the sound, he turned around and smiled. Master Zhong is here. What's the matter? Chapter 1134. Qin Yining couldn't help but stop and ask worriedly, what strange thing happened? She couldn't be blamed for her nervousness. This was the time when the war was at its peak. Pang Shao and Ji Xiu were working together. They were like a hot knife cutting through butter. Within 2 months, they had driven the Tatar troops away from the capital. They had also retreated all the way, and recaptured several cities. Pang Shao also saved many civilians, and more civilians volunteered to join the South Pacifying Army. Because Pang Shao was leading the civilians to reclaim their homes, these people became more and more courageous in battle. Now, the war was at its peak. When the two armies met, the South Pacifying Army had food to eat. How could Pang Shao starve the Tiger Army that he had raised? Even if he wasn't the commander of the Tiger Army. Therefore, in these 2 months, Qin Yining used the treasure to feed all the soldiers on the front lines who were fighting against the Titan. However, Li Qitian didn't do anything. He only cared about celebrating the recapture of the cities and didn't have any intention of increasing the food supply. Li Qitian's actions naturally caused many soldiers to be dissatisfied. However, when he issued a decree for the various armies to come to the capital, he had already made it clear that he wanted everyone to provide their own food. Since everyone had already come, it meant that they approved of his decree. At this time, even if they were dissatisfied, they could only swallow their anger. Especially when they saw that the South Pacifying Army and the Tiger Army were eating well and wearing good clothes, the other armies were envious. However, in order to feed so many people, the treasure had been used up. Qin Yining had taken out all the wealth he had accumulated over the years. The most important thing was that after the disaster, even if he wanted food, it wouldn't be easy to find it. These days, Qin Yining seemed to be living a comfortable life. He looked like he was focused on nourishing the fetus and waiting to give birth. However, he was actually very anxious. She couldn't do anything for Pang Xiao. The two of them were in different places. The only thing she could do was to make sure that he had enough food to eat, warm clothes to wear, and that he had medicine to treat his injuries in time. If she couldn't solve these problems, Pang Xiao's situation would be even worse. Qin Yining's mind was spinning 1,000 times, but in reality, in just a few breaths, Master Zhong had already walked in front of Qin Yining and said in a low voice, "Wang Fei, today, a company called the Great Solar Grain Company took the initiative to look for me. They said that they have a large amount of stored grain for sale. I went to take a look. Not to mention that the grain was good, the price was even 30% cheaper than the grain we bought from Tianjin. They have so much food, but instead of hoarding it and selling it at a high price, they are doing this. I find it really strange." However, when asked in detail, the man said that he wanted to contribute to Dezhou's imperial court by supporting the soldiers on the front lines and taking back Dezhou's land. "It's not like I haven't seen people who are so devoted to their country. You and Wang Yi are both like this, but I've never heard of the Daily Grain Company before. You suddenly came to me, as if you know I'm your trusted aide who specializes in running grain for you." Qin Yining frowned slightly when she heard this. Just as Master Zhong said, this situation was indeed strange. From her point of view, the other party took the initiative to extend an olive branch when the grain was in a difficult situation. It really solved a big problem. However, this help came too suddenly and too timely. It was as if someone had been watching her movements and acted according to the situation when she was at her most difficult. Thinking of this, Qin Yining vaguely guessed something. "I understand. I have a plan for this matter. The most important thing is to solve the problem of insufficient grain. Later, you can go and see Mr. Xia and discuss how to act as per the original plan." When Master Zhong saw that Qin Yining was so confident, he felt relieved. "In that case, I will do as Wang Fei says." Qin Yining nodded in agreement. After returning to the room, Qin Yining told Ji Yun, "Prepare brush and ink for me. Wang Fei wants to write a letter to Wang Yi again." Ji Yun smiled and scooped 2 spoonfuls of water into the inkstone. Then, she twisted the ink stick and slowly slid it. Qin Yining held her stomach and sat down with the help of Bing Tang. "The battlefield is constantly changing. I really don't dare to disturb them. However, I still have to send a letter from time to time." Qin Yining's letters to home had always been about good news and not bad news. Pang Xiao was fighting on the front line. If she still made him worry about her and dragged down his energy, it would be too wrong. Therefore, the content of her letters was mostly gossip. She would also write about her current physical condition. At the end of this letter, she mentioned how the issue of the grain was resolved, directly stating that it was Qiu Feishan who helped. She didn't intend to claim credit, and didn't directly come to talk about it, but directly sent someone to deliver the grain. Qin Yining did not know what the relationship between Qiu Feishan and Mu Jinghu was like. However, she always hoped that they could get along well. Even if it was not for each other, she had to take pity on Yanji. Perhaps she was being too soft-hearted. The food and letters were sent to the front line. The fastest speed would be 20 days. In the Southern Pacifying Army's camp, the banners were fluttering loudly. There were so many tents that one could not see the end of them. The food and supplies that were sent from outside the camp attracted everyone's attention. A man who had just joined the Southern Pacifying Army said emotionally, "These food were all prepared for us by Wang Yi. The food from the imperial court has not arrived. If it were not for Wang Yi watching over us, I'm afraid that we would have to fight the Tatars with empty stomachs." That's right. I don't know where the Tatan got the money. Not only are they strong in battle, they also eat better than us. Isn't it because the Liu family sided with the Tatan? I originally thought that the Liu family was a good family. Now, it seems that they are scum who can ignore the safety of the imperial court for their own selfish reasons. What kind of aristocratic family is this? When they do things, they are simply not worthy of our attention. When the food was sent to various parts of the camp, Pang Xiao also looked at the letter. He passed the last page to Mu Jinghu, who was beside him. "Take a look." Mu Jinghu took the letter with a strange expression. After reading the contents, his face twisted for a moment before returning to normal. Passing the letter back to Pang Xiao, Mu Jinghu lowered his head and was about to walk out of the tent. Pang Xiao hurriedly stopped him. "Blockhead, actually, I know what you're thinking, but it's been so long. Boss Chiao has been writing you letters, but you've never been willing to read them. She did use you, but the past is the past. I don't plan to pursue it, so don't be calculative about it. Even if you consider Brother Yen, you should let go of what you should." Mu Jinghu shook his head. "You don't understand." Pang Xiao pulled Mu Jinghu over and sat down casually with him. "What do I not understand? We are all men. I also know that you have feelings for Boss Chiao. I followed Master's instructions and snatched her away." Mu Jinghu's voice was muffled. "She comes from a prestigious family and is very smart. Many men are no match for her. I know how powerful she is and how capable she is, so I snatched such a woman to be my wife. At first, I didn't expect her to accept me immediately. But even though we have Brother Yen again, she is still the same. In front of her, I am like a bad guy who stole her away. Her eyes are always full of contempt. She thinks that I don't understand many things, so she doesn't even tell me and makes the decision. She said that it was for my own good. But how can she be sure of what I think, and what choice I should make? To put it bluntly, she doesn't think that I am a boorish man. She thinks that I am not from a prestigious family like her. I also forced her to marry me. I thought about it carefully. After such a long time, she might be tired of seeing me. She had no choice but to give birth to Brother Yen with me. Just thinking about it makes my head hurt." Mu Jinghu pursed his lips and said in a low voice, "So after thinking about it, I will divorce her after our matters are settled. From then on, we will have nothing to do with each other. She can marry whoever she wants, and leave Brother Yen to me." Mu Jinghu was not a talkative person. He was also not good at telling his secrets and thoughts to others. But today, he said it very clearly. Pang Xiao did not understand what was going on between Mu Jinghu and Qiu Feishan in the past. Now that he heard Mu Jinghu say this, although he felt that Qiu Feishan might not look down on him as much as Mu Jinghu thought, but now that such an open-minded and loyal person like Mu Jinghu had felt such humiliation, it showed that there was a real problem between the husband and wife. Pang Xiao sighed. "Even so, you can be a good father, but how can you be a good mother?" Mu Jinghu was not convinced. "If I take care of Brother Yen alone, I might be able to teach him better. Isn't it enough that he has me as his father?" "Of course not. You clearly have a way, so why do you have to fight with Boss Chiao? Even if she did something wrong, she has already realized your importance and has already tried to please you and apologize to you countless times. You are still as stubborn as a bull. Don't tell me you won't even give her a chance to turn over a new leaf." Mu Jinghu pursed his lips and remained silent. After a long time, he said, "We'll see." Hearing this, Pang Xiao was relieved. As long as he was willing to relent, things would only get better in the future. He patted Mu Jinghu's shoulder and went to find Ji Ziyu, Ma Cheng and the others to discuss the next battle. There is less than half a day's journey from here to where the Dragon Legion is trapped. Si Qin and Lu Heng have already retreated. We can take advantage of this and completely rescue the rest of the Dragon Legion. This will increase our chances of winning. Ma Cheng's voice was low and he was in high spirits. Ji Ziyu did not immediately nod. Instead, he turned to look at Pang Shao. What do you think? Pang Shao crossed his arms and thought for a moment. Then, he shook his head. I feel that Taiden's motives are not pure. Maybe he is using the Dragon Legion to lure us into a trap. We need to save the Dragon Legion, but we cannot forget to fall into the trap. Ji Ziyu nodded. You are right. Although we have the advantage in numbers, we do not have enough supplies. We cannot afford to delay them. If we want to win, we have to win in one blow. Not only do we have to save the Dragon Legion and minimize the casualties, but we also have to think of a way to defeat Lu Heng. Chapter 1135. But the alliance between the Lu family and the Taiden is so strong. They had a common goal before, so who would care about the small details? What should we do if we really want to shake their alliance? This is the most critical moment of the war. How should we break their alliance? Ma Qing sighed. This is not an easy task. Pang Shao recalled Lu Heng's usual behavior and said objectively, Lu Heng is indeed a troublesome opponent. He is very capable. If we want to use strategies to break the alliance between Lu Heng and Si Qin, we need to think about it carefully. But we can't wait now. Ji Ziyu pointed out the current situation without holding back. Pang Shao naturally agreed with Ji Ziyu's judgment. However, he still said confidently and optimistically, don't worry. Let's deal with the current battle first. Their alliance must be built on mutual trust. If they can't trust each other in the future, their alliance will naturally fall apart. What we need to do now is to destroy their trust in each other. Ma Cheng and Ji Ziyu heard this and nodded at the same time. That's a good idea. Ji Ziyu said, even if they have a common goal now, they are not of the same race. Whether it's Si Qin against Lu Heng, or Lu Heng against Si Qin, they must be hiding a lot of thoughts in their hearts. Once they are discovered by the other party, it may be the last straw that breaks the camel's back. Pang Shao called Su Weiji and a few other strategists over to discuss with Ji Ziyu's people. In the end, they came up with a meticulous plan. The next day, rumors started to spread in the army. Did you hear? Master Lu personally came to see Wang Yi yesterday. It seems like he wants to ask for peace. Master Lu is still from Dezhou. No matter what, he won't help the Taiden bully our own people. Then what about what he did before? In my opinion, he has the intention to do so. However, now that he has seen Wang Yi and Duke Ding working together, the Taiden might not have a chance to win this war. It's understandable that Master Lu wants to use this opportunity to build a good relationship with them, right? Rumors and slanders had always been the fastest to spread. Pang Shao had only given a general idea, but in the end, there were many versions of the rumor. Moreover, each version was logical and rigorous. It was even more believable than what Pang Shao had said before. Pang Shao and Ji Ziyu didn't think that the rumors would spread. If they didn't come up with this idea in the beginning, even they would have believed that Lu Heng wanted to pledge allegiance to Dezhou. I'm almost convinced by this rumor. Ma Cheng stood in front of the tent with his arms crossed. He looked at the soldiers who had gathered to start a fire and were still discussing this matter in low voices. He turned around and asked Pang Shao, Wang Yi, can this matter be spread to Taiden Khan? It definitely can. Pang Shao nodded confidently. Ma Cheng had always admired Pang Shao. So, he naturally believed Pang Zhao's words when he saw Pang Zhao speaking so confidently. He couldn't help but chuckle when he thought of the conflict between Tatar and Lu Heng. Just as Pang Zhao and the others expected, in the Titan camp, Si Qin listened to the spy's report calmly. "Khan, please reconsider. After all, Lu Heng is from Dezhou. There's a saying in Dezhou, those who aren't of our race are sure to have different intentions. Lu Heng might betray us at any time. If he joins forces with Dezhou to deal with us, what should we do?" Si Qin's face was still handsome. However, after fighting for several days and suffering humiliation after Titan's defeat, many of the court officials didn't understand him. Many of them were disloyal. Those who were eyeing his throne even brought up a Nari's death to make an issue out of it. Everything wasn't going well for Si Qin. Even his face showed signs of dejection. It wasn't easy for him to gain the support of Beiji's old officials, led by the Lu family. That was how he was able to directly make a move and slap those old officials who didn't trust him in the face. However, now someone was telling him that Lu Heng actually had ulterior motives and could set him up at any time. How could Si Qin be in a good mood? If he saw Lu Heng now, he might wring his neck. Just as he was thinking this, someone outside the tent reported, "Khan, Patriarch Lu is here." Si Qin's face darkened. "Let him in." The curtain of the tent was lifted, and a graceful and handsome young man dressed in a silk robe with a net scarf on his head slowly walked in. Every movement of his revealed the background and strength of character of an aristocratic family. Just by looking at him, one could tell that he was extraordinary. Si Qin stared at Lu Heng expressionlessly. He wanted to see what Lu Heng's intentions were. Lu Heng smiled and went straight to the point. "I already know about those rumors. I guess that Khan might misunderstand, so I came to explain it to you personally." Si Qin raised his eyebrows. "Patriarch Lu, please speak." Lu Heng said calmly. Those rumors suddenly appeared. "I have to say that Ji Ziyu and Pang Zhao together are much more difficult to deal with than either of them alone. Not to mention you, even I almost believed them." She wondered if she had come into contact with them at some point but had forgotten about it. "However, Khan, if you think about it carefully, you will understand that all of this is nonsense. The people of Dezhou and I have long been irreconcilable. Dezhou's fatuous ruler killed my people. The entire Lu family, which was a huge family, was slaughtered. Only a few people who followed me survived. If someone treated Khan like this, would Khan still be loyal to such a fatuous ruler? Moreover, I have already been labeled as a traitor. Even if I turn back now, with how suspicious Pang Zhishi is, how would he believe me? Since we have already shed all pretense of cordiality to this point, there is no turning back. Moreover, Titan has been on the campaign these past few days, and I have used all of my power to support them. Khan is a smart person. Once you calm down and think about it carefully, you will know that the rumors cannot be trusted. Because betraying Khan will not benefit me at all." Si Qin was deep in thought. After calming down, he felt that Lu Heng's words made sense. With the temper of Dezhou's fatuous ruler, even if Lu Heng went back, he would only be condemned. There was no benefit for him to go back and pledge allegiance to Dezhou. However, after thinking about it, Lu Heng would not betray him and help Dezhou deal with him because there were no benefits. However, what if there came a day when helping Dezhou would benefit him more than helping him? Si Qin did not believe that a person who could pledge allegiance to another race would have such noble moral integrity. At that time, he would most likely take the same path as Dezhou's fatuous ruler. However, they were currently facing a strong enemy, and the alliance could not be broken. Si Qin nodded. Her tense shoulders relaxed, and her sitting posture became much more casual. "What you said makes a certain amount of sense. However, you must be careful. Don't let Ben Khan catch evidence of your betrayal. Think about your family, and then think about yourself. Ben Khan is not afraid of Dezhou's 100,000 soldiers. Against you, he will definitely be able to catch you. Think about it carefully. Do you think you can escape? What Lu Heng hated the most was being threatened. However, he could not do anything now, so he could only smile and nod. He had funded Tayden, but he did not have any real power. However, seeing that his money was being used in the right place, his mood improved. After chatting with Si Qin for a while, Lu Heng returned to his tent. In the military camp, Bien Ruhan's food and shelter were not as good as before. However, he still proudly adhered to his aristocratic habits. Even in the military camp, he still dressed up delicately. When Lu Heng saw Bien Ruhan's back view looking at the mirror, he was annoyed. If you dress up like this, then stay in the tent obediently. Don't go out and walk around. Bien Ruhan was wearing a palace flower in the mirror. He sneered and straightened the brightly colored peony flower. You think I won't go out just because you say so? What do you care? Lu Heng rubbed the space between her eyebrows and sat down on the wooden bed in exhaustion. She sneered and said, "We live in the barracks and are constantly being watched by the Tauters. Do you know what kind of people the Tauters in the barracks are? Those Tayden men don't know how to behave. If you still want to keep your innocence, then don't dress up so much and go out less. Don't embarrass me." Bien Ruhan's face turned pale. It was unknown whether it was out of fear or anger. She suddenly turned around and glared at Lu Heng. "I'm embarrassing you. No matter how embarrassing I am, I'm not so lowly as to beg for food in front of the Tauters. If I get hurt in front of you, then it's because you're useless as a man." Lu Heng felt irritated whenever he saw Bien Ruhan. When he heard her yell, his heart was in a mess and he could not think clearly. He did not want to argue with a woman and let the onlookers take advantage of it. He immediately got up to leave the tent. Yes. Seeing that Lu Heng did not even listen to her and was about to leave, Bien Ruhan was flustered and exasperated. "Where are your thoughts? Ah. You dare say that everything you're doing now is for the Lu family. You're clearly doing it because of that slut. You're the one who doesn't like me, but who's the one who's going through thick and thin with you? You've lost your conscience." Bien Ruhan's words completely dug out the deepest secret in Lu Heng's heart. He remembered what the spies he had sent to Dezhou to find out about Qin Yining's whereabouts had said this morning. His heart skipped a beat. She was pregnant again and was about to give birth. She only cared about Pang Xiao. Even when she was pregnant, she did not forget to help Pang Xiao gather food. He really envied Pang Xiao. He was able to receive a woman's sincere feelings and devotion. But what about him? All he received was vulgarity, noise, and clamor. Wenru. Yes, patriarch. Family head. Lu Wenru silently followed behind Lu Heng. Hearing the voice, he came forward and bowed. "Send out a message. Have our people go to Golden Harbor and secretly protect Prince Zhongshuan's consort." Lu Wenru looked at Lu Heng in surprise. Chapter 1136. Hearing this, Lu Wenru's delicate face was full of sighs. He wanted to say something, but hesitated for a while. In the end, he couldn't help but say, "Master, why are you doing this? No matter how much you do, you've already had so much fun with Prince Zhongshuan's consort. It's impossible now. You're a practical person. Why make things difficult for yourself for someone you can't have?" How could Lu Heng not understand this? But when it came to matters of the heart, it was hard to control it. Perhaps he knew what he should do, but when things came to this, he couldn't help but worry about the person who would never agree to him. "I know what you mean. I'm just following my heart. Whether she knows or not, it doesn't matter. In her heart, I'm already a traitor who can't be saved. Whether I do well or not, she doesn't care. Hearing Lu Heng say this, Lu Wenru's heart was extremely sour. The previously high-spirited and famous young talent of the capital, the most talented second master of the Lu family, had now fallen to this state. The current situation was definitely related to Lu Heng's longing for Prince Zhongshuan's consort. If he didn't love an impossible person, how could Lu Heng's judgment of the things he did be biased? Lu Wenru had followed Lu Heng for a long time and had always been loyal and never spoke much. Thus, even though his thoughts were very rich, he still didn't show it on his face. He only nodded calmly and didn't say anything else. Lu Heng looked into the distance with his hands behind his back. It was as if he could see Qin Yining through the mountains. These days, Qin Yining's life was also a bit difficult. In the beginning of autumn, the weather in Jingang gradually became cold. Qin Yining's stomach became bigger and bigger, and her entire person was very tired. After more than half a year of hard work, Golden Harbor's autumn harvest had yielded results. The people were strong enough to survive the natural disaster. The city gradually regained its prosperity, and Qin Yining's appetite gradually improved. However, when she was 8 months pregnant with the twins, her appetite was still good. Now, she was lazy to eat and exercise. Even their daily stroll had to be forced by Bing Tang and Ji Yun to get up and walk around. Wang Fei, you can't be so lazy. When you're free, we have to walk around the courtyard a few times. That way, it will be easier for you to give birth in the future. Bing Tang supported Qin Yining's arm and advised with a smile, right now, you're working too hard. All day long, instead of thinking about how to take care of the children, they put all their efforts into preparing provisions for the front lines. How can this go on? Yes. Ji Yun supported Qin Yining's other arm and nodded in agreement. She joked, Wang Yi specially arranged for Sir Xia to come over for the matter of provisions. Sir Xia is definitely an expert at strategizing. You're still worried about leaving the preparation of the military to him. Qin Yining burst into laughter. Her unpowdered cheeks were much rounder because of Bing Tang's careful care during pregnancy. Her smile became brighter, you two little hoofs, you only know how to tease me. If Sir Xia heard this, he would think that I don't trust him. Sir Xia has been with Wang Yi for a long time and is meticulous in his work. How can I not be at ease? I'm just worried about Wang Yi. I don't know what I can do for them. Bing Tang shook her head and sighed, Wang Fei's 2 pregnancies have been difficult. Neither of them have been able to catch up with Madam's peaceful days to rest. But Wang Fei has done well. This time, it's twins again. If Wang Yi knew, I don't know how happy he would be. Qin Yining lowered her head and caressed her bulging abdomen. She shook her head, I don't plan to tell him yet. At first, I wasn't sure if it was a pregnancy pulse. Later on, my belly was much smaller than the previous pregnancy. Bing Tang couldn't tell if it was a twin from the pulse. It was only when my belly got bigger a few days ago that I was able to confirm it. I'm also afraid that something will go wrong and make him happy for nothing. He's on the battlefield and lives on the edge of a knife every day. How can he be distracted by such things? Bing Tang and Ji Yun both understood Qin Yining's feelings. The people they missed dearly were also fighting on the battlefield every day. They were also constantly worried. They didn't know if they would be injured or if they would be able to eat and wear warm clothes. On the other hand, women like them could only stay in Golden Harbor and couldn't get close to the front lines. Even if they went, they wouldn't be able to help. They could only pay attention to their own actions and not add to their worries. Ji Yun smiled and comforted Qin Yining, Wang Fei sometimes thinks too much. But Wang Yi might even like to worry about you. If it was someone else, Wang Yi wouldn't be bothered to think so much. Qin Yining smiled. Right now, the war is at its peak. He won't tell me, but hasn't the situation at the front lines already reached our ears? The Dragon Legion hasn't completely broken free yet. They don't have enough food. In addition, Lu Heng and Si Qin are both good at scheming. They are really in a dangerous situation now. Look, everything was fine. You are thinking about this again. We are all women. Even if we are worried, what can we do to help? Bing Tang smiled and then covered her mouth to say in a low voice, if you give birth to twins in the future, not to mention how happy Wang Yi will be when he finds out, even if the emperor knows, he might be jealous. What's so funny about that? Qin Yining said helplessly. This jealousy might become trouble for us. We have to be more careful in the future. Ji Yun and Bing Tang both sighed. When other women were pregnant, they had people at home to take care of them and wait for delivery. Only their Wang Fei had to worry about so many things. She also had to be on guard at all times to see if anyone was plotting against her. Wang Fei, how about we quietly move away and avoid those people? Ji Yun asked in a low voice. There seemed to be little stars flashing in her eyes. She was very expectant. However, Qin Yining said, the enemy is in the dark while we are in the light. Even if we move, we can't say if the other party will follow us. At that time, it is very likely that we will be ambushed. It is better to stay here. Caressing her bulging abdomen, Qin Yining's eyes were full of expectation and gentleness. I just want to safely give birth to the children. When they are safely born, we can do whatever we want to do with less effort. Wang Fei, don't worry. We definitely will. Bing Tang and Ji Yun said with certainty. Xia Yu gathered a batch of food and supplies and sent the list to Qin Yining. Wang Fei, please look. See if there is anything else we need to add. Qin Yining leaned back on the official's hat and looked down to flip through the list. Then he said with a smile, Sir Xia has always been meticulous in his work. I think there is no problem at all. This can be delivered. Okay. The autumn weather is gradually getting colder. Wang Yi and the others have now recovered their lost land and fought all the way to the vicinity of Heaven's Gate. I think they will be able to rescue the Dragon Stallion army trapped in the canyon of Heaven's Gate in a few days. Dezhou's army will only grow stronger and stronger. Xia Yu smiled and said, at that time, Wang Yi and Duke Ding will lead the Tiger army and the Dragon Stallion army respectively. Even if there are 100 Lu Hengs behind the Titan. Even if they support it, they will not be able to resist these two godlike armies. Qin Yining nodded in agreement. Thinking about the future battle situation, although they still had to take one step at a time, at least the prospects were promising. After the food and supplies were delivered, Qin Yining received news from the front lines after another month. Wang Yi and Duke Ding's cooperation is a perfect combination. The Dragon Stallion army has returned to Duke Ding's command. The Titan have been chased out of Heaven's Gate and retreated to Tianshu Gate. Heaven's Gate, Tianshu, Tianlang, and Tianyu are the four gates of Dezhou. When they are successfully chased out of Tianyu Gate, it will be a true victory. Qin Yining only felt that victory was in sight. Even her breathing became much clearer. Perhaps it was because the hot summer had ended and the cool autumn had arrived. Even though she was about to reach full term, she still felt refreshed. The future was promising. She was not as tired as before, and her spirit was much better. This also made Bing Tang and Ji Yun heave a sigh of relief. Qin Yining did not tell Pang Xiao about the possibility of giving birth to twins. However, Bing Tang mentioned this in the letter he wrote to Huzi. When Huzi saw this paragraph, he immediately went to the main tent with the letter. Pang Xiao, Ji Xiu, Ma Qing, and Gao Wenliang were discussing what they should do next in front of the map. When they heard the sound of hurried footsteps outside the tent, they raised their heads vigilantly. Huzi only realized that he was a little too rash when he barged in. He hurriedly put the letter behind his back and smiled awkwardly. Pang Xiao saw that it was Huzi and then looked at Huzi's conflicted expression. He could not help but ask, "What's wrong? What's the matter?" "Wang Yi." Huzi touched his nose and said, "It's my fault for being rash. It's a private matter. I barged in a moment of desperation. I hope Wang Yi can forgive me." Pang Xiao originally wanted to scold Huzi. After all, they were in the military camp and not in the prince's residence. He could do whatever he wanted. However, when he thought about the letter he received from Qin Yining this morning, along with Bing Tang and Ji Yun, Pang Xiao's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that Huzi saw something in the letter? He said in a low voice to Ji Ziyu and the others, "Excuse me for a moment." Then he quickly walked towards Huzi and indicated for him to go out with him. When they were outside the main tent, he asked in a low voice, "Speak. What's wrong?" "Wang Yi, Bing Tang's letter today said that the princess consort is pregnant with twins." "What?" Pang Xiao's voice suddenly rose. Everyone in the tent craned their necks to look. Huzi pointed at a sentence on the letter, "It's true. Bing Tang said that the princess consort's body is not as strong as it was last year, but she is not homeless. Giving birth to twins shouldn't be a problem. She has been busy preparing recently and is very busy. The next time she writes to me will be after the young master or young miss is born." As he spoke, he counted with his fingers. Then he laughed loudly and said, "That's right. The next time I receive the princess consort's good news." Pang Xiao was dumbstruck for a moment. After a long time, he muttered, "She didn't tell me." Huzi stilled. Only then did he remember that the princess consort was not willing to mention this in the letter. He could not help but feel embarrassed. He seemed to have said too much. Chapter 1137. Pang Xiao stood there in a daze, his eyes staring blankly. Huzi felt more and more frightened as he looked at him. "Wang Yi, this is a good thing. Don't be too excited." Pang Xiao waved his hand. After a moment of silence, he suddenly said, "Arrange for some more people to go to Golden Harbor to secretly protect Wang Fei." Huzi's expression turned cold. He nodded and said, "Yes." Pang Xiao turned and strode into the tent. His expression was grave as he said quickly, "We have to speed up. The longer the war drags on, the more disadvantageous it is for us." Ji Ziyu nodded in agreement. He carefully observed Pang Xiao's expression and knew that he must have known something. There was a 99% chance that there was news from Qin Yining. "Shi, what's wrong?" Pang Xiao's thoughts had already drifted to Qin Yining's side. When he heard this, he reacted for a while. "Sister Yi is about to give birth. The doctor said that it's twins again. I want to end this war quickly." The longing that had accumulated in his heart and never revealed reached its peak when he learned that Qin Yining was pregnant with twins again and was about to give birth in a few days. How could he not miss her? It was just that he was busy fighting every day, reclaiming lost territory, and resisting the Titan. He had no choice but to suppress his longing for her. She had married him, but she had never lived the good life that he thought he would give her. She had followed him and wandered around in fear for so long. Now, she was going to the gates of hell again. She was going to give birth, but he was still in Heaven's Gate and could not accompany her at all. The last time Qin Yining gave birth, they were surrounded by danger. Pang Xiao still felt his scalp go numb when he thought about it. He really did not want anything to happen to Qin Yining. If something happened to Qin Yining this time, what should he do? He really needed to speed up so that he could reunite with Sister Yi sooner. Pang Xiao seemed to be lost in thought after he had answered. Ji Ziyu pursed his lips and said after a long while, we must attack quickly. So, we must have a way to attack quickly. We can do it this way. Pang Xiao collected his thoughts and focused on discussing with Ji Ziyu and the others. As for Qin Yining's residence, he had also invited a famous midwife from Golden Harbor. Your Highness, the delivery room has been prepared. The two famous midwives in Jin Gang have also been invited and are now living in our fu. With me here, Wang Fei only needs to be at ease and will ensure that you and the children will be safe and sound. Qin Yining smiled and said, with you around, I'm naturally at ease. Stroking his heavy abdomen, Qin Yining felt as if there was a rock pressing down on his chest. The closer she got to giving birth, the more swollen her legs and feet became. She could not even wear embroidered shoes now because her feet were swollen by at least 2 times. But even so, she still had to be supported by Ji Yun and Bing Tang every day. Xiaoyu, on the other hand, took over the preparation of military supplies. If there was anything, he would discuss it with shopkeeper Zhong face to face, so Qin Yining didn't have to worry about it anymore. Qin Yining supported Ji Yun's hand and had to rest every few steps. He rubbed his sore waist and said, I've been feeling uncomfortable these days. Not only that, I also have a bad premonition. Have Jing Zhe and Jing Hu Wei carefully check the residence again. Don't let anyone take advantage of this opportunity to sneak in. Once she was about to give birth, everyone would be so busy that they would not be discovered so quickly even if someone sneaked in. What if an assassin sneaked in to assassinate her? Or, what if someone sneaked in to steal her child? The more Qin Yining thought about it, the more worried he became. His brows were tightly knitted together. Bing Tang chuckled and said, Princess Consort, you've already instructed us to do this several times. Jing Zhe and the others have already made arrangements. Don't worry, everyone is here. Nothing will happen. Qin Yining smiled bitterly and said, you don't know. My premonitions about some bad things have always been very accurate. As long as I have a bad premonition about something, things will develop in a bad direction if I think it's bad. I don't want to be like this, but I can't help but worry. After all, Wang Yi and I have made too many enemies. I'm afraid that my child will suffer if something happens. Right? I can't let you suffer, right? As Qin Yining spoke, he stroked his bulging abdomen. She knew that the child could not understand these words, but she still liked to communicate with the child in her womb. Bing Tang knew that this was a phenomenon unique to women who were about to give birth. They were always more worried than usual. Don't worry, no one will barge in. If it really happens, Jing Hu Wei and the secret agent will have to face the wall and reflect on their mistakes. Bing Tang deliberately teased Qin Yining. Qin Yining's lips curled into a smile as well. However, the worry in her heart could not be alleviated by a few words from others. She did not want others to worry about her, but it was not easy to control her emotions. She knew that her condition was not right. Perhaps it was because she was about to give birth. She would be fine after the child was born safely. Qin Yining comforted herself and continued to move around according to Bing Tang's instructions. The delivery date was a few days earlier than Bing Tang's prediction. On this day, Qin Yining had just washed up and was about to go to bed when he felt the urge to go to the toilet. She had no choice but to get up and walk out with Ji Yun's help. However, she had only taken a few steps when she felt something strange under her skirt. Ji Yun saw this and was afraid that Qin Yining would be nervous like her, so she did not dare to make a fuss. She only helped Qin Yining to sit down by the side and quickly walked out to find Bing Tang. When Bing Tang entered the room, he saw that Qin Yining's expression had eased slightly. After checking, he said, Princess Consort, the children are about to be born. Shall we move to the delivery room? Why is it so early? Qin Yining said worriedly, could it be that there's something wrong with the children? Of course not. Don't let your imagination run wild. Bing Tang hurriedly said, all right, you're in good condition now. Let's take a few more steps while you still have the energy. Ji Yun said, why don't we let them prepare and let Princess Consort go on a roller coaster? That won't do. Princess Consort can move on her own. Why should she ride on a roller coaster? Princess Consort, listen to me. The more diligent you are now, the easier it will be when you give birth later. Not to mention that you can't ride on a roller coaster now, you still have to walk more later. Qin Yining nodded. She suddenly felt a throbbing pain in her abdomen and could not help but stop in her tracks. The unbearable pain spread. Fortunately, Qin Yining always knew how to endure and did not scream out loud. After enduring for a while, she slowly walked towards the delivery room that had already been prepared. 2 midwives and Bing Tang served Qin Yining together. They gave her a birth-inducing medicine, changed her clothes, and helped her walk around the room. Qin Yining felt better sometimes, but the pain was severe at other times. Princess Consort, if you feel uncomfortable, you can shout out. You'll feel much better if you shout out. Bing Tang saw Qin Yining like this and advised her worriedly. Qin Yining shook her head, it's too tiring to shout out. A drop of sweat slid from her chin onto her clothes and dyed a small dark stain on her light red, wide-sleeved outer robe. Bing Tang thought and said, the kitchen has prepared some nourishing soup for you. Use some later so you don't have too much energy. Qin Yining nodded and grabbed a handkerchief to wipe the cold sweat off her face. Then she continued to follow Bing Tang and the midwives' instructions. Compared to giving birth to Zhao Gu and Han Gu, Qin Yining's delivery this time was slightly smoother. However, she was still in pain for an entire day. It was not until the evening of the next day that the child's loud cries could be heard from the inner residence. Xiaoyu and Master Zhong were not in the mood to do proper work these 2 days. They were both worried about Qin Yining's situation. Master Zhong could be said to have watched Qin Yining grow up. Xiaoyu was devoted to Pang Xiao. Both of them were doing this for their respective masters. They understood that only when Wang Fei and Wang Yi were harmonious would they, as retainers, have good days. Therefore, when they heard the first cry, the 2 people who had been spinning around on the floor stopped in unison and looked anxiously in the direction of the inner residence. Even though they were the trusted aides of Qin Yining and Pang Xiao, there were differences between men and women. It was not good for them to ask directly. Not long after, there was a second loud cry. Xiaoyu and Master Zhong were stunned. They said in disbelief, did Princess Consort give birth to twins again? Master Zhong and Xiaoyu exchanged a look and also had joy on their faces. Quick, let's send a servant girl to ask. Right, quick, go ask. How is Princess Consort's situation? Is it Master or Miss? Xiaoyu and Master Zhong hurried the servant girl to ask in the inner residence. A short while later, she came back with good news. Sirs, Princess Consort gave birth to twins. Right now, Princess Consort's situation is not bad. Master and Miss are also very healthy. Really? Xiaoyu clapped her hands. Quick, grind the ink for me. I have to tell Wang Yi. Quick. It was good fortune to have more children. Wang Yi and Princess Consort were deeply in love and were not willing to take concubines. They did not have many children to begin with. Adding on the fact that so many things had happened at home, once Wang Yi ascended the throne in the future, they could not continue to have few children. At that time, even if Wang Yi did not intend to have any other women, they would still persuade him. But they did not expect that Princess Consort would be so capable. After giving birth to a pair of twins, she gave birth to a pair of twins. His Highness was currently in a tense situation, and a pair of twins was a good omen for the dragon and phoenix. Perhaps what they hoped for could really come true. Xiaoyu remembered the trust in Pang Zhao's eyes when he gathered his trusted aides and told them about how the family Qin and Yao family members had faked their deaths to escape. She remembered how Pang Zhao valued them and how grateful he was to them. She also remembered that no matter what danger Pang Zhao faced, he would not easily give up on any of them. He was such a benevolent lord, and now he had a pair of twins. This was a gift from the heavens to him. This was the good karma he deserved. Xiaoyu's eyes couldn't help but moisten. When he found out that the family Qin and Yao family members had secretly left their hometown to save their lives, he was very gratified. Now that he found out that Pang Zhao already had 3 sons and a daughter, he was even happier. His hands trembled, and he didn't even notice that the ink had dripped onto the letter because he was too excited. Xiaoyu wrote down his excitement and ordered someone to send it to the front lines at top speed. Qin Yining also heaved a sigh of relief and sent the good news to the front lines. Chapter 1138. After hearing such good news, Pang Zhao became even more anxious to end the battle quickly. The people around him noticed that his attacks were becoming more and more aggressive. Every battle, big or small, revealed a sense of surprise and ruthlessness. It was as if he used to be a sheathed sword, but now he was showing off his ability. Pang Zhao and Ji Ziyu also noticed some details on the battlefield. Why do I feel that the discord between Si Qin and Lu Heng has deepened? Pang Zhao whispered. You think so too? Ji Ziyu's words confirmed Pang Zhao's guess. It seems that what we did before is effective. Yes. They are not of the same race after all. They don't trust each other to begin with. The battlefield is constantly changing, and any small matter can affect the outcome of the battle. It is impossible for them to not care about their own safety. Naturally, they trust each other less and less. Pang Zhao laughed mockingly. He was even more confident about this battle. Looking at the recruits who were training seriously on the drill ground, Pang Zhao sighed. These recruits came here with a blood feud. We drove away the Titan all the way here. The places we passed were once the homes of these recruits. At that time, when the Tatars marched straight into our territory, they were brutally slaughtered wherever they went. Who didn't want to avenge their family members who were lucky enough to escape alive? They fought with anger and determination to take revenge. It was as if they didn't care about their lives. The Titan were familiar with their aura. It seemed that the day of driving the Titan out of Dezhou was closer. Ji Ziyu saw Pang Zhao's confidence. He thought of the current situation of Pang Zhao's family and whispered, "Have you named your son and daughter?" "I have." When Pang Zhao mentioned this, even his expression changed. "My son is called Xian Gu and my daughter is called Yunjia Pang Rishuan and Pang Riyun are both named Ru in this generation of the Pang family. Ji Ziyu smiled. That's a nice name. The child will also be very good-looking. At the mention of children, Pang Zhao was a little excited and became more talkative. I've always preferred daughters. Daughters are obedient. It would be even better if they looked like their mother. To this day, I still remember Sister Yi's appearance when I first met her in Liang City. Back then, she was still very young. At such a young age, she was already thinking of ways to treat her foster mother's illness. If I were my daughter, I definitely wouldn't bear to let her suffer so much. Back then, I had too much ability to help Sister Yi and didn't participate in her life when she was young. Now, I can take care of a child who looks like Sister Yi. Pang Zhao spoke incoherently. The joy and hope in his words made Ji Ziyu shake his head and laugh. It's all thanks to your little miss that I can see you being so childish. Pang Xiao was taken aback for a moment before he burst into laughter. While the war was tense, Pang Xiao could always find joy and hope. Qin Yining went through his confinement with peace of mind under the care of Bing Tang and the others. I wonder what Wang Yi will name Little Master and Little Mississippi. Ji Yun sat sideways by the window and looked at Brother Zhao, who was wrapped in the swaddling clothes of a big red magpie, looking around with wide eyes. She couldn't help but gently tap the other child's face with her finger. Qin Yining smiled and said, "There's no rush. There's no rush to name the child. Previously, when I was in the countryside, the child was barely able to come up with a name when he was older. Haven't you always been in good health?" "Yes, I also heard that it's easy to raise a child with a cheap name. Therefore, many rich families deliberately give their children cheap names. Things like bolts, benches, and so on." Bing Tang couldn't help but laugh, "But our little miss is as beautiful as a flower. It's not good to give her a vulgar and unpleasant name." Qin Yining was amused by Bing Tang's conflicted appearance. She even forgot the frustration of not washing her hair during confinement. Seeing Qin Yining smile, Bing Tang coaxed, "Wang Fei, just hold on for a few more days. You'll be 17 in 3 days. When Gu and Jia are 1 month old, this servant will definitely serve you to bathe and dress you up. Right now, I'm not letting you wash your hair or open the window because I'm afraid you'll get sick. If you get sick during confinement, then you can only be cured during the next confinement. Does Wang Fei have to suffer every day? I know you're doing this for my own good." Qin Yining couldn't help but laugh, "You're too careful. I'm fine. I know what to do at what time." The days passed very quickly. In the blink of an eye, the children were 1 month old. Due to the current tense situation, Qin Yining was worried that she wouldn't be able to protect the children if something happened. Therefore, she didn't hold a big celebration for the children's 3rd and 1-month-old birthdays. She wanted to keep the children in her sight at all times, afraid that something would happen. She let the children follow her old path. On this day, Qin Yining had just ordered the wet nurse to bring the children over when Bing Tang quickly walked in and said with a smile, "Wang Fei, Wang Ye's letter arrived. Quickly let me see." Qin Yining hurriedly stood up and took the letter. She opened it and said, "Wang Yi might have already thought of the children's names. Nowadays, the transmission of letters is much slower than before. It's making me wait. It's because Wang Yi and the others are driving the Taitan people further and further away." Ji Yun also received Tang Xiu's letter. After she finished reading it, she walked in a very good mood. Qin Yining carefully read the letter and didn't miss a single word. Finally, she chewed on the 2 names Ruxuan and Ruyun and said with a smile, "That's great. Ruzhao, Ruan, Ruxuan, and Ruyun. It's obvious that they're a family." After she finished speaking, she was a little worried for a long time. If Brother Zhao and Brother Han find out that they have a younger brother or sister, will they think that I don't care about them anymore? Ji Yun and Bing Tang laughed loudly when they heard this. "Wang Fei is too careful. Don't worry, it'll be fine. Brother Zhao and Brother Han are already grown up. Moreover, they're by their maternal grandfather's side. How could they go astray?" Thinking of her father's ability, Qin Yining was slightly relieved. In the blink of an eye, Brother Zhao and Brother Han are almost 4 years old. But I can't be by their side most of the time. Qin Yining was a little downcast. She walked to the side of the cradle and bent down to look at the twins who were sleeping soundly. "I don't know when this kind of homeless life will end. In the future, when Brother Xian and Sister Yun grow up, I have to learn this lesson." She had experienced the most painful separation in the world. Her situation in the future shouldn't be worse than now, right? Just as Qin Yining was taking care of the children with peace of mind, the people that Pang Xiao secretly arranged outside the Fu noticed something strange at the same time. It's really strange. Why are there more young men walking on Golden Harbor Street than before? That's right. Didn't most people go with Wang Yi to fight the Titans? Now that there are suddenly so many new faces, it's really strange. Should we tell Sir Xia about this? Of course we should. Wang Yi arranged to secretly protect Wang Fei, but it's not necessary to hide it from Wang Fei. Right now, the situation is tense. It's best to be safe. The Jinghu Wei discussed and decided that one person would go to Xiaoyu to report. The others would continue to guard their original positions. When Xiaoyu learned of this matter, she didn't dare to conceal it and immediately went to tell Qin Yining. Qin Yining was holding Sister Yun in her arms and gently rocking her. Hearing this, her hands paused. She hesitantly said, "This matter is really not simple. These people may have come with a purpose. It's very likely that they are targeting us." Yes. Xiaoyu's expression was serious as she said, "Wang Fei, don't worry. I've already ordered people to set up a tight defense. I won't let anyone plot against us. But at this time, if we can get in touch with Magistrate Qin, it will be safer. You and Wang Yi have done so much for the people. Magistrate Qin is a straightforward and loyal person. He will definitely remember what you and Wang Yi have done and do his best to protect you. Magistrate Qin has people from the Yamen in his hands. It will be more convenient for him to act." Sir Xia is very right. Qin Yining nodded in agreement. "I'll have to trouble Sir Xia to make a trip." "Of course. Wang Fei, don't worry." Xiaoyu bowed and left. Qin Yining was in a daze as she held Sister Yun. She was certain that these people who suddenly came to Golden Harbor were targeting her. Her first suspicion was Li Qitian. Li Qitian was very jealous. It was difficult for him to have children. Now that Pang Xiao had a pair of twins, Li Qitian was very jealous. It was possible that he would kill them because of this. Qin Yining was very worried. She was not afraid of anything. But Brother Xian and Sister Yun were still in swaddling clothes. How could they stand the friction and bumps? Just as Qin Yining expected. At this time, Li Qitian received the good news from the front line. Although he had a satisfied smile on his face, he had been suppressing a fire in his heart. Thanks to Prince Zhongshuan's bravery and good fighting skills, Titan has finally been driven out of Tianyu Pass. From now on, Dezhou's territory is still Dezhou. No foreign enemy can invade. That's right. It's also thanks to your majesty who knows how to use people well. The officials were jubilant. There was nothing more exciting than driving out foreign enemies. When these people were praising Prince Zhongshuan, they did not forget to flatter Li Qitian. However, listening to the officials praising Pang Xiao, Li Qitian did not refute because he wanted to show his grace. He was now the emperor, so it was not convenient for him to personally lead the army. Otherwise, if he led the army, it would not be much worse than Pang Xiao's. With so many people, the Titan people were naturally scared witless and obediently hid out of Tianyu Pass. Everything was fine, but all the credit had been taken by him. It was really tiresome. In the imperial court, Li Qitian had a belly full of anger. Who knew that when he returned to the imperial study, he would receive a letter from the spies? The Qin clan actually gave birth to twins for Pang Xiao. Li Qitian's eyes were like bronze bells. He gritted his teeth and glared at the spies. The spies bowed their heads and said, "Yes. He doesn't deserve it." Li Qitian was furious. He raised his hand and grabbed the inkstone on the table and smashed it against the corner of the wall. He then kicked over the high table in the corner. The blue and white porcelain vase on top of it fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. "Your Majesty, please quell your anger." Xiong Jinxue and the other eunuchs did not care about the broken porcelain on the ground and hurriedly kowtowed respectfully. Your Majesty, please quell your anger. How could Li Qitian quell his anger? What he hated the most was that he was already the emperor, but there were always people who felt that he could not compare to Pang Shao. Now, there was no movement from his imperial harem, but Pang Shao had a bunch of twins and phoenixes. Who did he think he was? Did he deserve to have twins and phoenixes? Chapter 1139. Li Qitian's face was ferocious, scaring the spies, Xiong Jinxue, and the other eunuchs into silence. They buried their heads tightly and didn't dare to look at Your Majesty's face. It doesn't matter if they look now, but if something happens in the future and Your Majesty loses face, wouldn't it be their fault? Li Qitian paced back and forth with his hands behind his back, his face gloomy. At this moment, a young eunuch's joyful voice suddenly came from outside. Your Majesty, the Empress Dowager's head palace maid came. She said that the Empress Dowager was very happy to hear that Prince Zhongshuan and Duke Dingwood defeated the Taitan and drove them out of Dezhou so quickly. Today, the Empress Dowager is going to hold a banquet in Ci and Palace to celebrate the victory. She asked if Your Majesty is free to go and have a family banquet together. Celebrate, celebrate. What's there to celebrate? Wasn't it normal that Pang Shao and Ji Xiu could drive the Taitan out of Dezhou? If it were him, he might be faster. How could he deserve so many people's praise? Li Qitian's face was dark. After a long time, he said patiently, "Jin knows." The young eunuch didn't know that Li Qitian had just lost his temper and thought that he was also happy to recover the lost territory. Therefore, she happily agreed and turned around to quickly deliver the letter to Ci and Palace. Xiong Jinxue, who was kneeling on the ground, was so nervous that his muscles tightened. He was afraid that the emperor would vent his anger on them in the blink of an eye. It would be good to beat them up, but it was also possible to drag them out and behead them. Li Qitian gritted his teeth and endured for a long time to suppress his anger. He couldn't show his anger and jealousy outside, because it would lower his status. He wanted to be a wise prince, and being able to tolerate his subjects was his greatest advantage. When it was about time, Li Qitian took Xiong Jinxue to Ci and Palace. Who knew that as soon as they arrived at the palace gate, they saw the courtyard of Ci and Palace decorated with lanterns and colored banners from afar. At first glance, Li Qitian thought that he was celebrating the new year. At the palace gate, the palace maid of Ci and Palace saw Li Qitian from afar and hurriedly ordered someone to inform the Empress Dowager. The others all knelt down and saluted. This servant pays her respects to Your Majesty. With a cold face, he strode into the courtyard of Ci and Palace. Even the palace maids' clothes as ants' clothes. Even the palace maids, who usually dressed and SSSSS and SSSS. 2. SSSSS. Li Qitian became even angrier when he thought of how the common people worshipped Pang Shao as a god of war and even forgot that he was the emperor of Dezhou. When it came to Pang Shao matters, one was always the bane of the other. From Tian Jizi's criticism of the imperial star to the current situation, Li Qitian was almost numb to Pang Shao matters. However, when it came to the situation in the Ci and Palace, all that was left was unwillingness. Because these ignorant women who didn't know anything about the situation wouldn't understand at all if you tried to reason with them. Instead, you would only end up angering yourself to death. Brother, you're here. Upon hearing the palace servant's message, Li Helan quickly walked out to greet her. She bent her knees and bowed. Her exquisitely made-up face looked very festive. Li Qitian suppressed his anger and answered, "Yes." Li Helan smiled and said, "The Dezhou dynasty is finally peaceful again. This is all thanks to Imperial Brother for giving Alon a chance. Li Qitian cast a sidelong glance at Li Helan. I thought you would mention Pang Zhishi. Li Helan's expression showed a moment of displeasure, but in front of Li Qitian, she had always been able to control herself well. Imperial Brother, you must be joking. Ji Lan is the prince consort. It's good that you understand. Don't pester Pang Zhishi like before. Even though his entire family is dead, he really dotes on the Qin clan. You don't know this yet, do you? Li Qitian suddenly stopped and told Li Helan the news he had just heard. The Qin clan gave birth to a pair of twins. Li Helan's eyes widened and she stopped in her tracks. She said in disbelief, Imperial Brother, didn't their twins die? Yes, but the Qin clan is really good at giving birth. They gave birth to a pair of twins for Pang Zhishi. Li Qitian's heart was filled with jealousy, and he couldn't help but speak harshly. You've been married to Ji Lan for so long. She has 2 children and 4. Look at yourself. You're also a woman. Why can't you do it? Li Helan's face flushed red. She bit her lip and looked up at Li Qitian in disbelief. When Li Qitian saw Li Helan like this, he strangely felt much better. He walked all the way to the main hall. The imperial concubines and the empress were all gathered here. Everyone was dressed in bright clothes and they all bowed when they saw Li Qitian. Li Qitian's eyes swept over the imperial concubines who were like flowers, especially those who were dressed more jubilantly than the new year. The irritation in his heart was about to reach its peak. The empress knew Li Qitian the best. She knew that he had always been jealous of Pang Zhishi, so she didn't plan to come today. However, she couldn't disobey the Empress Dowager's orders. She also couldn't tell Li Qitian's thoughts to the public. When she saw Li Qitian's expression, her heart skipped a beat. She quickly retreated without leaving a trace. Imperial Mother. Li Qitian bowed to the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager was wearing a peacock blue robe and a full set of golden cicada head ornaments. Her entire face was glowing, as if she had suddenly become 10 years younger. When she saw Li Qitian, she helped her son up with a smile. Quickly get up, quickly get up. Your Majesty's ability is great. He arranged for the right people. Tayden was driven out so quickly. When I heard the news, I was very happy. Let's celebrate today. Your Majesty shouldn't only care about government affairs. Take this as a chance to rest. When the Empress heard the Empress Dowager say this, she knew that Li Qitian wouldn't be happy. She lowered her head even more and carefully thought about how she should leave early. Li Qitian suppressed his impatience and said a few words to the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager said with emotion, after all, we are friends who fought together. Although Pang Zhishi is sometimes a bit arrogant, he is still very capable when it comes to fighting. How does your Majesty plan to reward him this time? The string in Li Qitian's heart that was stretched taut had been touched several times when he accompanied the Empress Dowager to talk about the front line. Now that he heard this, he finally broke out after enduring for a long time. He's just doing what he should do and doing what he should do. If this court official does what he should do and comes to me for a reward, how should I deal with him? Li Qitian's tone was too cold. The entire side hall was originally filled with laughter, but as soon as these words came out, it immediately became so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. The Empress Dowager blinked several times to completely suppress the shock of being humiliated by her son in public. She then realized that she seemed to have misunderstood the Emperor's intention. The Empress Dowager smiled awkwardly and said, "The Emperor is right. I have lived in the palace for a long time and my knowledge is limited. There are some things that I don't understand. If I have said something wrong, please don't blame me." All the concubines lowered their heads. No matter how stupid they were, they knew that no one could stand out at this time. Once they did, they might not have a chance to turn things around in this life. Li Qitian looked around and glanced at the concubines with dissatisfaction. Finally, his eyes fell on the Empress Dowager. Imperial Mother has lived in the palace for a long time and doesn't understand anything. Imperial Mother should know that internal energy is not allowed to interfere in politics, right? I didn't argue with Imperial Mother's clan about that matter in the past. Imperial Mother must have forgotten it already, right? The Empress Dowager's expression changed greatly and her hands trembled. Yes, the Emperor is right. I am old and don't understand too many things. I only said more because I care about the Emperor. Li Qitian sneered, is that so? Imperial Mother's health is important. You should think more about yourself. Xi'an Palace also has a small Buddhist hall. Later, I will have people decorate the Buddhist hall in a way that Imperial Mother likes. If you have nothing to do, you should stay in the Buddhist hall more. Eat vegetarian food, chant Buddhist scriptures, and copy scriptures. Only when your heart is calm can you be at peace. Don't you think so? Li Qitian was grounding the Empress Dowager. The Empress lowered her head even more, afraid to meet Li Qitian's eyes. But Li Qitian didn't care how these concubines looked at him. He smiled and said, you too, if you have nothing to do, you should cultivate your moral character. The imperial court is not rich right now, and the national treasury and internal funds are tight because of the war. But you all only know how to dress up like Qiao Qiao and walk around. Don't you have anything to do after eating? If you have time, you should do more needlework or chant Buddhist scriptures with the Empress Dowager. If you have nothing to do, don't walk around and cause trouble. Qinxia obeys the Emperor's decree. The concubines knelt down in unison. Li Qitian stood up and brushed the non-existent dust off his robe. Zhen is busy with government affairs, so Zhen will leave first. How could the Empress Dowager dare to ask about the family banquet? The Emperor had just said to be frugal, so she didn't dare to eat this family banquet. The Empress Dowager said that she was tired and told everyone to disperse. The Empress left Xi'an Palace and returned to her own Qinkuan Palace. Only then did she breathe a sigh of relief. Nyang, this servant heard that Prince Zhongshuan's consort gave birth to a pair of twins for Prince Zhongshuan. Who did you hear it from? It was the Emperor's little chamberlain who unintentionally said it. The Empress raised her hand and waved the head palace maid away. She smiled helplessly. No wonder the Emperor was so abnormal today. He couldn't hide his jealousy. Thinking of Pang Xiao, the Empress couldn't help but think of the time she spent with Pang Xiao on the other side of the suspension bridge. Now that she thought about it, it was simply a dream. But based on her understanding of Li Qitian, how could he vent his anger by just throwing a tantrum? Next, the Emperor would definitely do something to Pang Zhishi. And she was just a harem girl, so she couldn't help at all. The news that Pang Xiao and Ji Ziyu worked together to expel the Taitan and drove them all the way out of Tianyu Pass spread all over the capital. For a time, the fame of Prince Zhongshuan and Duke Dinggua's god of war was in the limelight. Even the ignorant children knew that when they grew up, they would be brave like Prince Zhongshuan and serve the country and the people. The spies kept inquiring about the people's opinions and it continuously passed into Li Qitian's ears. He felt that his patience was reaching its limit. He couldn't give Pang Xiao another chance to perform. Chapter 1140. Your Majesty, this official thinks that this matter is inappropriate. At the imperial court, the officials were very surprised by Li Qitian's decision. The more straightforward ones, who had argued with Li Qitian many times about Pang Xiao becoming the commander-in-chief of the Tiger Army, immediately stood up. The Taitan invaded our land and slaughtered our people. How can their crimes be washed clean by expelling them from Dezhou? Yes, Your Majesty. Someone seconded. This official thinks that now is the time to pursue the victory and eliminate future troubles. Since the Titan have already made a move against Dezhou, they should be prepared to suffer the retaliation of our Dezhou's soldiers. If we can't kill all the evil Titan, how can the imperial court explain to the people who were persecuted by the Titan? This time, the Titan traveled all the way from Tianyu Pass to the outside of the capital. Along the way, they burned, killed, looted, and didn't shrink from any crime. They slaughtered many cities. Later on, those who were willing to follow Prince Zhongshuan to fight the Titans did so for revenge. If your majesty doesn't agree, first, you will let the tiger return to the mountain and waste the advantage that Prince Zhongshuan gained. Second, you won't be able to explain to so many people, and the people's discussion won't be good. Your Majesty, please reconsider. Your Majesty, please reconsider. Many officials echoed in unison. Li Qitian gritted his teeth and clenched his fists to prevent himself from scolding in front of the imperial court and degrading his status as the emperor. However, the anger in his heart was already showing signs of setting the prairie ablaze. Li Qitian didn't want to show his irritable side in front of others, so it was extremely difficult for him to suppress his emotions and endure. Seeing that the emperor didn't say anything, many officials who knew Li Qitian's temperament realized that today's topic wasn't the emperor's favorite. Even the most upright officials saw that the emperor was so silent and knew that there must be a reason behind it. The imperial court was silent for a while. After a long time, Li Qitian said, "My beloved officials, your words are reasonable. If I don't take revenge for the Titan's rebellion, I'm afraid everyone in the world will call me a coward. We should also empathize with those who treat revenge as their spiritual pillar." Li Qitian's voice was extremely calm. However, the ministers could already tell from his tone that something was wrong. Tianzi wasn't someone who was easy to negotiate with. He had shown a great desire for power and control in the affairs of the court. Now that he was actually speaking according to the wishes of his subjects, everyone knew that there must be something else going on. Sure enough, Li Qitian said, "Dear ministers, is there a way to satisfy both sides?" This question seemed to be unclear, but Li Qitai's fans immediately understood what the emperor meant. Immediately, someone stood out and said in a clear voice, "Your Majesty, this subject has a different opinion from the other lords." Prince Zhongshuan already had a record of colluding with the ministers inside and outside the court, as well as the wealthy commoners, to oppose the imperial court. At that time, if Prince Zhongshuan didn't order people to monopolize the provisions, with Duke Dingguo's ability, how could the Tatars attack? This subject agrees. Prince Zhongshuan privately brought his troops here, but unexpectedly it was so easy for him to beat back the enemy. It's hard to say that he didn't have any shady deals with the Tatars in the dark. Perhaps all of this is just an act. Right now, the Southern Pacifying Army alone has gathered more than 400,000 people. If Prince Zhongshuan wants to rebel, I'm afraid he will be caught unprepared. Fart, fart. Big stinky fart. Some generals couldn't bear to hear this person's foul language maliciously smearing Pang Zhao's name. They immediately jumped out and pointed at the several ministers who spoke in front of them and angrily roared, "If it weren't for Prince Zhongshuan, would you still be standing here slandering him today? When he was fighting for the country, you were raised by the Prince Zhongshuan like vermin. What qualifications do you have to stand out and slander Prince Zhongshuan? Boorish man. A boorish man like you speaking in front of your Majesty is simply dirtying your Majesty's ears. You are the treacherous minister who is full of shit. Despicable." Li Qitian rubbed his temples. Listening to the people below arguing about Pang Zhao, he became more and more impatient. If it was a normal day, he would be able to keep calm. However, these days, things didn't go his way. Li Qitian was so angry that he wished he could directly capture Pang Zhao and kill him. Now, looking at the noisy ministers below, and then looking at those cunning old foxes who refused to express their opinions, he felt a wave of disgust in his heart. No matter how they discussed it, it was always like this. When it came to Pang Shao, there was no smooth sailing. Li Qitian covered his mouth and coughed. Xiong Jinchue's forehead was already covered in sweat. Seeing Your Majesty's movements, he immediately shouted, "Quiet." The ministers who were originally expressing their own opinions immediately stopped arguing. They didn't dare to say another word in front of the emperor. Li Qitian said the second half of what he wanted to say with satisfaction. Prince Zhongshuan has really worked hard in this fierce battle against Tayton. I can't bear to let him continue to risk his life on the front line. In addition, I haven't seen him these days, and I really miss him very much. Therefore, I have decided to give full authority to pursue Tayton to Duke Dinghua and urgently summon Prince Zhongshuan back to the capital to report on his work. I don't know what you think. Everyone's heart skipped a beat when they heard this. They all understood that Your Majesty was planning to punish the meritorious ministers. A straightforward general immediately shouted, "Your Majesty, this minister thinks that replacing Prince Zhongshuan at the last minute is a great disadvantage for Dezhou. Tayton has long been scared witless. If you call people now, I'm afraid that Tayton will rise from the ashes again." A minister who figured out His Majesty's intention immediately retorted, "Isn't Duke Dinghua a brave and good god of war? You are doubting Duke Dinghua's ability and also doubting Your Majesty's decision. You're a pedantic scholar who is simply twisting words and forcing logic. Your Majesty is doing this for the stability of the imperial court, not for a certain person. If you want to take advantage of this opportunity to use Your Majesty's hand to eliminate dissidents, then you're wrong." Seeing that the ministers were about to quarrel again, Li Qitian's impatience was almost written on his face. Silence. Xiong Jinchue observed Li Qitian's expression. Seeing that Li Qitian was so unhappy, he hurriedly shouted to stop the ministers quarreling. Everyone raised their eyes to look at Li Qitian, who was sitting on the imperial steps, and realized that Your Majesty didn't seem to want Prince Zhongshuan to continue guarding the border. It's just that the war is almost over. When it's almost time to award the merit, Your Majesty is remote and doesn't want Prince Zhongshuan to finish the war, as if he's afraid that he'll get some merit. However, the emperor was already displeased. Since he was willing to make such a request, he had already made a decision. No matter how much they said, they couldn't change the fact. Instead, they would anger the emperor. No one knew what would happen. Even the most reckless people knew that they couldn't continue to anger the emperor. Therefore, under the emperor's high and mighty gaze, no one dared to refute. Li Qitian's decree was immediately drafted into a memorial. With the excuse of letting Prince Zhongshuan recuperate, he urgently summoned Prince Zhongshuan back to the capital. The decree was sent to the border at top speed. At this time, Pang Shao and Ji Ziyu's group had just finished a battle. The Tayton people had set up their tents far away. Under the sunlight, the white tents looked like a sea of foam. Ji Ziyu looked into the distance and then sighed in a low voice, "Fortunately, we seized the opportunity and drove them out. Otherwise, it's hard to say who would win and who would lose." Pang Shao nodded and smiled, "That's right. With Lu Heng here, it's really hard to say what will happen on the battlefield." Just as the two of them quietly let out a sigh of relief, Huzi led a young eunuch over with a serious expression. It was the young eunuch's first time delivering an imperial decree. As soon as he saw Pang Shao, he was immediately intimidated by the biting cold aura around him. He was so scared that his legs and stomach cramped. He was afraid that he couldn't even speak a complete sentence. Pang Shao knew that these eunuchs who delivered imperial decrees would cause displeasure on both sides if they encountered an imperial decree from Your Majesty. An experienced eunuch would never rush out. Thinking about it, this young eunuch in front of him was only 16 or 17 years old. He was considered young in the harem. "Wang Yi. This servant is here to deliver Your Majesty's decree." The young eunuch presented the decree with both hands. This surprised Pang Xiao. After all, every time Xiong Jinshui came to deliver a message, he would carefully read the imperial decree. He didn't care if your majesty's words were reasonable or not. He had to be careful not to let the young eunuchs see any clues. At that time, Xiong Jinshui would use a high and mighty tone to choose him. Pang Xiao opened the imperial decree and read 10 lines at a glance. He raised his sword-like eyebrows. Ji Ziyu saw Pang Xiao's abnormality and couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Does your majesty have other orders?" "Your majesty wants me to return to the palace. He says that he's afraid that I'll be too tired here. He wants me to immediately rush back to the capital to recuperate." Ji Ziyu raised his eyebrows and took the letter. He looked at it and asked, "What do you plan to do? Do you really want to return to the capital?" Pang Xiao's expression didn't change as he lowered his eyes. "If I really go back this time, I'm afraid that I won't be able to come out in the future." Ji Ziyu's expression darkened. He cast a sidelong glance at the young eunuch standing to the side. The young eunuch trembled in fear and couldn't help but take 2 steps back. Ji Ziyu whispered in Pang Xiao's ear, "You also think that this trip is bad?" "Yes." Pang Xiao shook the imperial decree. "It's a big taboo in the military to change the commander in the middle of a battle. The emperor also came from a military background. It's impossible that he doesn't know this. But he still issued such a decree. This means that he has already made up his mind. I think that something must have provoked the emperor and made him make such a decision." Ji Ziyu thought for a moment and said, "At the very least, it's jealousy." Pang Xiao smiled bitterly. "What do I have to make others jealous? The emperor's personality is like that. He doesn't look at what he has. He only looks at what others have more than him. Let's not talk about other things. The emperor is selfish and weak, and your Qin clan just gave birth to a pair of twins for you. The Son of Heaven delayed the war for his own selfish reasons, but you led the army to drive the Tatars out of the Great Zhou. This kind of comparison is enough to make the Son of Heaven hold a grudge." Pang Xiao couldn't help but admit that Ji Ziyu's words were right. But he felt that even if Li Qitian was jealous, he would do his best to suppress it in front of others. He wouldn't be in such a hurry to change the commander and summon him back to the capital. He wouldn't even care about his reputation. This was enough to show the danger this time. Ji Ziyu asked, "What do you plan to do? Are you really going to accept the imperial decree and go back?" Pang Xiao hesitated for a moment. If he didn't go back, Li Qitian would have something to say. They could accuse him however they wanted. Because he wasn't in the capital, he couldn't control what people said. If something bad were to spread, his reputation would be completely ruined. But if he went back, Pang Xiao knew that this time, it wouldn't bode well. Chapter 1141. Ji Ziyu could hear the resistance in Pang Xiao's words. He smiled and said, "As the saying goes, a general can't obey orders when he's abroad. Your Majesty is far away in the capital and doesn't know that this is a critical time for the war. If we relax a little, the Taitan with the support of the Liu family will make a comeback. Then, all our efforts these days will be in vain." As Ji Ziyu spoke, his eyes were like knives piercing the servant who delivered the decree. The servant understood Ji Ziyu's meaning. When he heard the conversation between Pang Xiao and Ji Ziyu clearly, the servant felt that he might not be able to keep his life. Now that he was directly asked to deliver such a message, the servant was about to cry. If he was lucky enough to survive this time, he would find fault with your Majesty. He would rather scrub the toilet than do such a dangerous thing. Prince Zhongshuan and Duke Dingguo were in front of him. If they said so, he could only nod and agree if he wanted to live. Yes, although this servant doesn't know much, I have seen the ferocity of the Tatans. If it weren't for Wang Yi and Duke Dingguo fighting desperately, the Tatans would have broken in. Pang Xiao smiled. He didn't want to make things difficult for the servant. He nodded and said, "It's good that you know. Go and have a good rest. You can leave tomorrow." "Yes." The little attendant bowed respectfully and left quietly. Ji Ziyu pursed his lips and looked at the servant's back with his hands behind his back. This person can't be left alive. It's nothing. He's just a servant. No matter what he says or doesn't say, it won't affect your Majesty's attitude towards me. He will still be suspicious. Although this was the truth, Ji Ziyu felt uneasy leaving such a person alive. Pang Xiao patted him on the shoulder. "Although we're at war and our hands are stained with a lot of blood, we still have to stick to our bottom line. If we treat killing as nothing, we'll gradually lose respect for life in the future, which will directly affect the way we do things in the future." "You're always so reasonable." Ji Ziyu turned to look at Pang Xiao. His tone was complaining, but his eyes were filled with admiration. It was precisely because of such perseverance that he was able to maintain his original heart for so many years without being disturbed by external matters. Pang Xiao clasped his hands behind his back and pondered for a moment. He said, "I think your Majesty will definitely be furious this time. He might even order people to arrest me. What's worse, he might even go after Sister Yi and my children. We can't wait any longer. We have to get them to leave." Ji Ziyu nodded. "That's exactly what I wanted to say. Your child is more important. Send someone over now." Pang Xiao nodded. He immediately selected all of the Jinghu Wei who were following him and had Tang Xiu lead them to Jingang. When Qin Yining found out that Pang Xiao had openly defied the imperial edict and refused to return to the capital to report on his work, Li Qitian was already furious and made things difficult for him. Because Qin Yining took the children and asked Magistrate Qin for help, Magistrate Qin specially arranged for the bailiffs to step up their patrols and closely observe the area around Qin Yining. They did indeed find a few unfamiliar men, but since they didn't make any moves, they couldn't act rashly. On this day, Magistrate Qin also received news from the imperial court and specially came to ask about Qin Yining. Wang Yi is wholeheartedly devoted to Dezhou, but his actions are too thoughtless. He could have complied with the imperial edict first and explained everything to your Majesty when he returned to the capital. At that time, your Majesty naturally wouldn't make things difficult for Wang Yi. But now, there's been a misunderstanding and your Majesty mistakenly thought that Wang Yi defied the imperial edict and disrespected your Majesty. Magistrate Qin shook his head repeatedly, looking very regretful. However, Qin Yining thought deeper. Pang Xiao was a thorn in Li Qitian's side. This time, when victory was at hand, he urgently summoned Pang Xiao back to the capital. He didn't want to give Pang Xiao any reward at all. He even had the intention of punishing him. This vividly displayed Li Qitian's radical side. In the past, Li Qitian would restrain himself for the sake of his reputation and various other reasons. But now, it seemed that he was increasingly unable to restrain his anger. Qin Yining was a bit worried. Your Majesty was a ruthless person. If he and the children stayed here, it was very likely that they would become the target of Li Qitian's revenge against Pang Xiao. Qin Yining smiled and said to Magistrate Qin, "Thank you, Magistrate Qin, for specially informing me of this matter. It's just that Wang Yi is the one who makes the decisions regarding the war. Wang Yi can do whatever he wants. I'm just a woman, so I don't know so much. In the next few days, I also want to take the children out for a walk. Magistrate Qin, you've helped us a lot along the way. I still don't know how to thank you." Magistrate Qin's old face turned red. He shook his head and said, "What are you saying, Your Highness? Compared to what Wang Yi and Your Highness have done, what I've done is really nothing. If your highness wants to go out for a walk, it's good. You can also relax a little. Perhaps when your highness has had enough fun and comes back, Wang Yi and the others will return triumphantly. That's right. Qin Yining smiled and said, they were able to drive the Titan out of Dezhou's territory. In the future, as long as they manage it well, the Dezhou dynasty will have good weather and the country will be prosperous and the people will be at peace. Your Highness is right. Magistrate Chen nodded in agreement. Then he asked, when does your Highness plan to go out? This lowly official will arrange for a few bailiffs to accompany you in case something goes wrong. Although we are still far away from the Titan, we don't know if there will be an ambush during the war. Qin Yining smiled gratefully and said, there's no need for that. After all, Jingang is also a city that was fought for. The bailiffs are already very busy. Wang Yi has arranged for some of his guards to be with me. With them looking after me, my safety should be guaranteed. County Magistrate Chen nodded his head and agreed, that's true. The bodyguards around His Highness are naturally top-notch experts. It's good that Your Highness' safety is guaranteed. After discussing with Magistrate Chen, Qin Yining immediately went to find Xiaoyu. Sir Xia, I have a bad feeling. Wang Yi refused to return to the capital, and it's not a secret that I gave birth to twins of a boy and a girl. I'm just afraid that someone will target me and the children. Your Highness is right. Xiaoyu said with a serious expression, I didn't think that the most difficult problem to solve, the problem of rations, would be solved so easily, but something like this would happen. Your Highness should quickly order people to make arrangements and bring more guards. Just as Qin Yining nervously ordered people to prepare for departure and planned to leave Jingang to lie low for a while, the news of Pang Zhao's disobedience was spread throughout the court. Li Qitian had originally been very proud. Pang Zhao's support among the people was so great. He didn't believe that the people would think if they knew that Pang Zhao was someone who disrespected the imperial court. But things did not go as smoothly as Li Qitian had imagined. Li Qitian was dressed like a young master from a wealthy family. He brought Xiong Jinshui, who was disguised as an attendant, and several secret agents, who were dressed as guards, along the streets of the capital. When they passed by a tea house, they sat down and ordered a pot of hot tea. The tea house was a place for the common people to chat and kill time. For a few copper coins, they could drink good tea and eat good snacks. Sometimes, they could listen to stories, and sometimes they could talk with friends. Today, the storyteller was not present, but the tea house was still very lively. Everyone was discussing Dezhou's defeat of the Titan. Prince Zhongshuan is really a brave god of war. It seems that many people are not lying when they say that Prince Zhongshuan is brave and fierce. Yes, if it weren't for Prince Zhongshuan, the Titan would have already invaded the capital. Your Majesty arranged for Prince Zhongshuan to take a detour. In fact, it was not appropriate. He should have opened the gates to welcome Prince Zhongshuan and his people. Then, perhaps the battle with the Titan would have already ended. When Li Qitian heard this, he couldn't help but frown. Xiong Jinshui and the secret agents lowered their heads, not daring to look at Li Qitian's expression. These old people had nothing to do after eating. Instead of going home to lie down like corpses, they went to the tea house to talk nonsense. They really didn't care about their lives. At this time, another old man said, this time, in order to strike while the iron is hot, Prince Zhongshuan directly beat the Titans until they didn't dare to provoke Dezhou. He had no choice but to disobey Your Majesty's decree. I don't know if Your Majesty will blame him or not. As he said this, the group of people shook their heads and sighed. Whether or not Pang Zhao would be convicted was what they were most concerned about right now. Li Qitian expressionlessly picked up the teacup and took a sip. Xiong Jinshui really wanted to shout for silence, just like he did in court. But right now, he could only pretend that he didn't understand. He lowered his head and didn't dare to move. Maybe your Majesty is just concerned about Wang Ye's health. In the future, Wang Yi will have to fight to expand his territory. Your Majesty might just want Wang Yi to come back and recuperate well, so as to avoid overworking himself and hurting his foundation. Not necessarily. I think that Prince Zhongshuan might have affected some people's interests. Wang Yi is so outstanding. It's normal for him to have an impact on others. If some people are jealous, naturally, some people will complain to your Majesty. Bah, there's really such a shameless person. These people had forgotten who had saved their lives. It's not the time to be scared witless by the Titan army at the city gates. It's only been a few days, but they're going to complain to Prince Zhongshuan in the blink of an eye. Aren't they afraid that their immoral son won't have a dick? Li Qitian clenched his fists. Although he didn't show anything strange on his face, he didn't stay in the tea house for long before he suddenly ordered a carriage to be prepared to return to the palace. The louder the voices of the people, the greater Pang Zhao's influence, and the angrier Li Qitian became. After thinking about it, he called the spies over. Do you know where the Qin clan is right now? Replying to your Majesty, I didn't dare to forget your orders. I've always ordered people to closely monitor Prince Zhongshuan's consort. Good. Li Qitian's index finger quickly tapped on the table, making a loud and clear sound. Not long after, the sound came to an abrupt stop. Li Qitian said, Go, capture the Qin clan and everyone around them, including their twins. Yes. The spy accepted the order and respectfully retreated. However, when they arrived outside the tea house, they thought about the complicated relationship between Prince Zhongshuan and your Majesty. Everyone who knew about the situation couldn't help but sigh. Jingang wasn't far from the capital, so Qin Yining didn't have much time to prepare. Fortunately, she made preparations in advance, so she was able to remain calm. Chapter 1142. Qin Yining held Brother Xian in his arms and leaned against the soft pillow in the carriage. He frowned and said softly, Don't worry. Let's take action first and wait and see what happens. Yes. Ji Yun nodded. Even though she felt uneasy, seeing Qin Yining so calm and knowing that Jinghu Wei and the spies were still around, she relaxed a little. However, Qin Yining had a bad feeling. She had always been a sensitive person. Staying in the mountains, she had a clear sense of danger. She had used this sense to avoid many dangers. This time, when she was talking to Magistrate Qin, she made the decision to leave Golden Harbor immediately. When she returned home, she hurriedly ordered people to make preparations and fled with her men. At this moment, she was still in a state of panic, as if a knife was hanging over her head, ready to fall at any moment. She hadn't felt such a clear sense of danger for many years. Qin Yining just didn't want to appear panicked and disturb others. Wang Fei, where are we going? Qin Yining pursed his lips and said, We're going to find our warship. Ji Yun said in surprise, Wang Fei plans to go to Water Zhe country to lie low. No matter if we go to Water Zhe country or not, we feel safer on the sea than here. When we first chose to stay in Golden Harbor, we considered this point. Wang Yi has arranged for people to look after the warship. The warship has also prepared fresh water and dry food all year round. It should last us for a while. Bing Tang smiled and said, That's a good idea. I don't believe that your Majesty's people can fly over. Qin Yining heard how relaxed she was and couldn't help but smile. His tense mind finally relaxed a little. However, they didn't immediately go straight to the point. After leaving Golden Harbor, they nervously took a detour. They planned to shake off their pursuers before going to the warship. The weather was cold. Since Golden Harbor was in the north, winter was naturally more intense. It was cold and windy in December. Qin Yining was sitting in the car with her child in her arms. She was burning a small charcoal stove, and she even had to wrap herself in a fox fur coat. She was also afraid that the bad air in the charcoal stove would affect brother Xian and sister Yun's health, so she especially opened the car window a crack to let in the cold wind. She leaned to the side to block the wind for the children. After walking for 2 days, the journey was safe and smooth, which made everyone relax a little. Your Highness, there's a village up ahead. It's getting late, so let's stay here and rest for the night. We can change our route tomorrow. Xia Yu said with a smile outside the carriage. Qin Yining smiled and said, that would be great. Thank you for making the arrangements. Xia Yu instructed Jinghu Wei to scout the way to the village. On the other hand, Qin Yining's team slowed down. Not long after, Jinghu Wei rushed back. The village is called Yangjia Village. There are only 20 or so families inside. Because the days are short during winter, there aren't many people walking around. We only found out after knocking on the door of one of the families. We spent a bit more money and that family agreed to let us stay for the night. That's good. Xia Yu agreed. Seeing that there was nothing wrong, she led the team in the direction of Yangjia Village. After the carriage traveled for a few zhang, large snowflakes floated down from the sky. They were carried by the cold wind and fluttered in the face. Jingzhi, Liao Zhibing, and the others who were following the carriage couldn't help but raise their arms to cover their faces. The wind and snow blew in through the crack in the window. Qin Yining quickly leaned over to protect the child in her arms. Ji Yun turned around to close the window. It's suddenly snowing heavily. We came at the right time. It didn't snow on the way here. Bing Tang smiled and gently coaxed the baby in her arms. Qin Yining smiled and nodded, that's right. Fortunately, it's snowing heavily and we've already found a place to stay. The others couldn't help but smile. The group quickly arrived at the village. Xia Yu got off the carriage first and went to negotiate with the family that had agreed to let them stay the night. She quickly returned and smiled, Wang Fei, please get off the carriage. Qin Yining nodded and wrapped the swaddling cloth properly. He supported Ji Yun's hand as they got off the carriage. Bing Tang followed behind, also carrying a large red swaddling cloth. She used her cotton cloak to protect the child in her arms and followed behind Qin Yining. Later, boil a pot of ginger soup and let everyone have some. It's really tiring to eat and sleep in the open. The weather is cold. It's better if everyone doesn't catch a cold. Yes. Bing Tang smiled and nodded, don't worry. Your body is the weakest here. Before Bing Tang could finish her sentence, she suddenly saw a flash of silver from the corner of her eye. It was so dazzling that she couldn't help but raise her sleeve to block it. Before she could react, Jingzhi and the others had already turned around and shouted, there's an ambush. Wang Fei, let's go. Qin Yining's heart skipped a beat. She carried the child and turned to leave. But at the same time, masked men dressed in black came from all directions with swords in their hands. Their footsteps were very light and silent. It was obvious that they were experts. Jinghu Wei, Jingzhi, Liao Zhibing, and the others immediately surrounded Qin Yining, Xia Yu, Master Zhong, and the others. They carefully observed these people. Xia Yu was so anxious that her face turned pale. Wang Fei, I didn't realize it just now. It's not your fault. Let's think of a way to break out of this encirclement first. Qin Yining hugged her infant and hid with her back to back with Bing Tang. There were more than 100 masked men in black surrounding them. They quickly surrounded the few dozen of them. Pang Xiao had arranged for 10 Jinghu Wei, 4 silver-masked spies, and a few of Liao Zhibing's brothers. These were the only people in their group who could fight. Against more than 100 people, how could they possibly win? Go! One of the men in black gave the order. The others immediately rushed forward. Jingzhi, Liao Zhibing, and the others immediately surrounded Qin Yining. Jinghu Wei roared and raised their swords to fight. Quick, find a chance to escape. The other party coldly ordered, Master has ordered that no one is allowed to escape. Capture all of them. Yes. The men in black were unwilling to back down and swarmed forward. Qin Yining's vision was blurred in the wind and snow. She was protected in the middle and could only see that everyone was fighting to the death. Brother Xian and sister Yun were probably frightened by the sounds of fighting and killing. They woke up with a start and cried loudly. The children's cries were crisp and clear. The sound of the children's cries could be heard throughout the quiet village. Qin Yining's heart ached. It was freezing cold and the children were crying in the snow. She was really afraid that the children would get sick from the cold. She hurriedly used her fox fur coat to protect the children in her arms. Jinghu Wei and the silver-masked spies heard the children's cries and fought with all their might. But this time, they could see that the other party was an expert and had come prepared. They were on par with them in terms of fighting skills, and some of them were even more skilled than them. They had already done their best, and the other party was also well coordinated. They were determined to capture them. Jingzhi's eyes immediately turned red. Fight them to the death. Yes. The other spies and Jinghu Wei agreed in unison. Everyone fought with all their might and fought a bloody path out of the encirclement. They fought and retreated, protecting Qin Yining as they broke out of the encirclement. But who knew that they had only taken a few steps when they were met with a group of armored cavalry. They were all wearing the uniform of the Jingji guards. The sound of the horses' hooves trampled the snow on the ground into mud. When Qin Yining heard that the other party wanted to capture them alive, she knew that it must be Li Qiqian's men who had chased them here. Now that she saw the Jingji guards, who could only come here because of the emperor's orders, how could she not understand? She hurriedly led her men into a side alley. Just as they turned around, a group of young men dressed as commoners rushed up and blocked the path of the pursuers. Princess Consort, leave quickly. Qin Yining found these people unfamiliar. But the few Jinghu Wei beside her looked familiar. Princess Consort, these are the new faces that we found in the city earlier. Those young men blocked the Jingji guards' cavalry with their bare hands. Hearing this, the leader couldn't help but say, "Our master ordered us to protect Princess Consort's safety." Princess Consort, leave quickly. Qin Yining was even more puzzled. Master. Among the people she knew, Lu Heng and Qiu Feishan were the only ones who could be called master. Qiu Feishan's relationship with Qiu Yuanqing was still unclear, so she couldn't be called the master of the Qiu family. So these people were sent by Lu Heng. Qin Yining didn't have time to be surprised. She turned around and fled with the child. Bing Tang and the others followed closely behind her. Jinghu Wei, the silver-masked spy, and the people arranged by Lu Heng tried their best to resist the pursuers. But Qin Yining and her men were outnumbered. The Jingji guards had more than 100 people, and they were all cavalry. They only needed to send a part of them to outflank Qin Yining. Qin Yining looked at the Jingji guards' cavalry standing in front of her on a tall horse. She couldn't help but hug the child tighter, and the child cried even louder. The person sitting on the horse was expressionless. Come, take her down. Yes. Everyone jumped off their horses and swarmed up. Jingzhi, Liao Zhibing, and Jinghu Wei had already been entangled, but they couldn't resist the enemy's numbers. Seeing Qin Yining being blocked, they couldn't do anything else. Qin Yining hugged the baby tightly and stepped back step by step. But the other party didn't show any mercy. Dozens of Jingji guards swarmed up, and Qin Yining and her men were immediately pressed to the ground. The baby in Qin Yining and Bing Tang's arms was also taken away. Give the child back to me. Let him go. Qin Yining suddenly raised her head and looked at the baby with red eyes. But the Jingji guards didn't care. They each held a red baby in their arms, and their postures were very casual. Bing Tang's baby was also taken away. She was so scared that tears flowed out of her eyes. She cried and roared, "If you have the ability, come at us. What ability do you have to hurt a baby in his arms? Those are Prince Zhongshuan's children. If you hurt them, Wang Yi won't let you off when he comes back." Ji Yun also roared angrily. Qin Yining roared until her voice was hoarse. Her red eyes made her look particularly ugly. The other party didn't take pity on her and pressed her face against the snow. This way, they wouldn't have to look at her ferocious expression. But Qin Yining still refused to give up. She was like a fish that had jumped out of a pond. She struggled desperately on the ground, and her voice was hoarse from screaming. Chapter 1143. Your child. What are you thinking? A Jingji guard grabbed Qin Yining's hair and turned her face towards him. There was an almost twisted smile on his dark face. These men were born in the military and were loyal to Li Qitian. Although they weren't ordinary people, they weren't people of high status either. They were ambitious and weren't willing to be under others. Normally, when they saw people like Pang Xiao, they had to bow. Even if she was a woman, as long as she married into a noble family, they had to be courteous. Today, he was able to hold a noble and beautiful woman like Qin Yining in the palm of his hand and make her kneel on the ground and beg for mercy without any dignity. He felt unprecedentedly refreshed. "Let me tell you, the Son of Heaven has ordered us to capture you rebels alive. When we return to the capital, we will naturally punish you as rebels. If you know what's good for you, then don't talk too much. Otherwise, we will directly gag your mouths." Qin Yining's hair was grabbed by the man. Her hair was already messed up, and her long hair was stuck to her cheeks by her tears. Through her hair and tears, she looked at the people holding two swaddling clothes. Finally, she forced herself to soften her tone. "Fine, fine. You came with the wind, so you have to bring this king's consort and the heir back to report, right?" Sensing the other party's grip on her loosening, Qin Yining gritted her teeth and said, "Even if we want to convict, with my family's Wang Ye status, we still have to wait for your majesty to personally decide. Wang Yi doesn't have any other children. Right now, he only has one son and one daughter. In the future, the heir will definitely be this child. If something really happens, even if your majesty wants to arrest Prince Zhongshuan and the heir, he won't be able to find them. You all know your majesty's temper." The Jingji guards and Li Qitian's spies looked at each other in dismay. They were all a bit shaken. "Forget it, we still have to keep them alive." The person who grabbed Qin Yining finally let go. But he still wasn't in a good mood. He turned and stroked Qin Yining's soft cheeks. "But if you want us to treat your child better, you have to give something in return, right?" His eyes greedily looked at Qin Yining's tear-stained face. Even though she was pressed to the ground in a sorry state, with her hair messed up and tears on her face, this woman was still an existence that they couldn't touch with. The Jingji guards on the side roared with laughter. That's right, that's right. This is Prince Zhongshuan's woman. We've never seen such a beauty in our family." Qin Yining clenched her teeth and slapped her hard when that person wasn't paying attention. She didn't hold back her strength, and her physical strength was much greater than that of an ordinary woman due to her years of outside training. The person squatting in front of her immediately had a buzzing sound in her head. She sat down on the floor before she could even react to what had happened. "You're not worthy. If you have the ability, kill me now." Let's see how your majesty will punish you if you can't hand over the Prince Zhongshuan's consort when you return to the capital. You! The man who was hit had a palm print on his face. His eyes widened in anger as he raised his hand and slapped Qin Yining. She couldn't hear anything, bitch. I didn't let you die, but I didn't say I'd let you live. You're still so arrogant. Just wait for your head to be chopped off. The man wanted to hit Qin Yining again. Ji Yun and Bing Tang had already struggled to squeeze in. Even though their hands were tied, they couldn't stop their movements. Xiaoyu, Jingzhi, Liao Zhibing, and the others were even more furious. They used all their strength to struggle, but they couldn't do anything. The secret agent who had been watching from the side came forward with a sullen face. All right, that's enough. The Jingji guards and the secret agent were two different departments. Moreover, the secret agent was the emperor's trusted aide. Although the Jingji guards had a higher position, they still didn't dare to underestimate him. With the secret agent's words, the Jingji guards didn't dare to continue acting rashly. The secret agent who often followed Li Qitian said, "Your Majesty's decree is to capture all of the Prince Zhongshuan's family members alive. Therefore, we must bring everyone here back. If they're dead, Your Majesty might decide to use them, but he can't. At that time, whoever killed their subordinates will be punished." Yes. Everyone responded in unison. A trace of blood dripped from the corner of Qin Yining's mouth. When the slap came down, his teeth had cut his tongue, and the blood hadn't stopped flowing. However, at least he could temporarily relax. At the very least, their lives could be saved for the time being. Qin Yining's heart ached for the two babies in swaddling clothes. The weather was cold and the ground was frozen. If they wanted to enter the capital, they would have to hurry. She could endure and make do with anything, but her children couldn't. You can leave the children to me. I can't escape. Isn't it troublesome for you to take care of the children yourselves? Blood dripped from the corner of Qin Yining's mouth and dripped onto her lapel on the ground, dyeing it red. The Jingji guards and the secret agent shook their heads at the same time. Prince Zhongshuan's consort has a noble status. How can she do such rough work? Don't you have a wet nurse in your group? If you don't have one, then don't feed them. We'll just make do with it. You're despicable. Qin Yining knew that they wouldn't dare to kill her children. At least, before Li Qitian gave the order, they couldn't leave a single one of them behind. However, if these people wanted to make them suffer, it would be very easy for them to torture them without torturing the children to death. Qin Yining's curses didn't anger these people. Instead, it made them laugh. This time, the mission went too smoothly. Everyone shouted and tied Qin Yining's group with ropes, making them look like dumplings. The Jingji guards left behind 20 people to assist the secret agent. The rest of them rode their horses and returned to the capital ahead of time. The emperor's secret agent and the Jingji guards all had horses. They also arranged for the two wet nurses that Qin Yining had brought along to board their carriages and handed brother Xian and sister Yun to them. You guys, take good care of these two children. They're not allowed to starve or freeze to death. Otherwise, we'll kill your entire family as an apology. Yes, yes, yes. Sir, don't worry. We'll definitely take good care of them. The two wet nurses had long been scared out of their wits. They were locals of Jingang and had received the grace of Qin Yining and Pang Xiao to survive. Now that they had the opportunity to protect their benefactor's children, they were very happy. However, they didn't dare to show it on their faces. When Qin Yining saw this scene, she was slightly relieved. Usually, when she needed to rest, she would let the wet nurses take care of the children. When she didn't have enough milk, she would let them feed her children. At least until they met Li Qitian, they could ensure the children's safety. However, Qin Yining's group was very difficult to deal with. Once Qin Yining was captured, Jing Zhi, Jing Hu Wei, and the others could only wait to be captured. They didn't dare to resist at all, for fear of harming their master's life. As for the people arranged by Lu Heng, because they were unarmed, more than half of them had already died. The remaining people saw that the situation was not good and quickly fled. There were already Beijing border guards chasing after them. At this time, it seemed that things were not looking good for them. Right now, they were all tied to a rope. The long line of people meandered along the snowy road. On both sides of the line were Beijing border guards and secret spies. Some of them were scouting the way, while others were guarding the back. The defense was tight. Qin Yining couldn't find a chance to escape. Qin Yining, who grew up in the south, couldn't adapt to this kind of weather. Sitting in the carriage, she had to wrap herself in a quilt and hug a hot water bottle. At this time, her feet were frozen to the point that they couldn't feel anything, but she still had to stagger forward in the snow. Qin Yining looked around. She was better off, but Jing Zhi and the others had taken off their cotton cloaks to make it easier for them to fight. At this time, they were wearing thin clothes. With the biting cold wind, she was really worried that something would happen to everyone. Fortunately, in this group, even Xia Yu was old but vigorous. Although Qin Yining was a woman, she received a lot of care from Bing Tang. Although she was weak for a while after giving birth, she was much better now. Ji Yun and Bing Tang didn't need to be mentioned. They gritted their teeth and persevered. They ate in the wind and slept in the open, braving the snow to move forward. In any case, no one was left behind. When they returned to the gate of the capital, it was the last day of the 9th year. The city stood majestically. The wasteland outside the city was covered in a thick layer of white. Qin Yining's feet and hands were frostbitten. Every step she took hurt and itched. Seeing that they were in front of the city gate, but still unable to escape, the haze in her heart increased. She felt even colder. In Li Qitian's hands, they became Pang Zhao's weakness. Qin Yining didn't want to become a bargaining chip to threaten Pang Zhao, but so many of her subordinates had been captured. Her child was also captured. At this time, she couldn't do whatever she wanted. Even if she wanted to end it all, she didn't have the right to do so. She still had to stand at the forefront of everyone and be the person who could resist. Come in. When they arrived at the city gate, the capital guards still didn't push open the gate. The left and right sides pulled the string of children and everyone was pulled into the city in a line. They ate in the wind and slept in the open. In the cold weather, their hair was messy and their clothes were dirty. When the commoners saw this scene, they couldn't help but whisper to each other. When someone saw Qin Yining in the crowd, they whispered, which family is this criminal woman from? She's so beautiful. If she was sold as an official prostitute, it would be everyone's good fortune. That's right. That's right. Such a beautiful woman, we usually don't see her. Bah. Watch your words. Someone who recognized Qin Yining immediately scolded. That's Prince Zhongshuan's consort. Prince Zhongshuan was fighting on the front lines, but Prince Zhongshuan's family was captured. What is the meaning of this? Have you forgotten who defeated the Tatars and didn't let the Tatars take half a step into the capital? If it wasn't for Prince Zhongshuan that day, Dezhou would have been destroyed. Now that you see his family here, you still dare to insult them. Are you still human? These words made everyone speechless. Someone mumbled, we also don't recognize her. Chapter 1144. Go away, go away. The Jingji guards waved their whips to chase the people away. The fat woman who had spoken was also chased away. This is a serious criminal of the imperial court. Your Majesty has to deal with them personally. How can you decide whether or not they have water to drink? Do they listen to you or the Son of Heaven? The Jingji guards' voices were loud and domineering. The people only dared to speak when they saw that these people didn't say anything and didn't stop them from approaching. However, now that they saw this scene, how could they dare to speak? Even if they were dissatisfied and had a sense of justice, not everyone would be willing to take risks for the sake of justice in their hearts. Qin Yining lowered her eyes and restrained the contemplation in her eyes. The Jingji guards and secret agents realized that they had chosen the wrong time to enter the city. At this time, they didn't know what Your Majesty's decision would be. Although they felt that Your Majesty's request for Prince Zhongshuan to return to the capital wasn't a secret, they didn't ask for permission and could easily be blamed. Therefore, they immediately pushed Qin Yining's group to speed up. Go to the Ministry of Justice's prison first. Lock them up and wait for the Son of Heaven to deal with them. Yes. Everyone responded in unison and immediately pushed the group forward. Although the people on both sides of the road had objections when they saw this, no one dared to say anything this time. Qin Yining closed her eyes. Her messy long hair fell by her cheeks as she lowered her head. She staggered for a moment and then stood up straight with difficulty. However, everyone could see that Prince Zhongshuan's consort was very weak. Some people were already nervously clenching their fists. There were also people at the back of the group who stretched their necks and rushed forward. Qin Yining was already very tired from the journey. Her frostbitten hands and feet, as well as the joints all over her body, were screaming in pain. Her hungry stomach was constricting and cramping from breathing too much cold air. However, she was too worried about her child, so she gritted her teeth and endured it all. Although she could continue to endure if she wanted to, she knew that she didn't need to. These people arranged by Li Qitian were too arrogant. Just like their master, they ignored the people's hearts. Now was the best time for her to create public opinion. Qin Yining gave up. She had been forcing herself to be numb and not care about the pain in her body. Now that she was indulging herself, the discomfort and weakness immediately drowned her like a tide. She staggered 2 steps and almost couldn't keep up with the group. Her footsteps were as heavy as lead. When the Jingji guards on the side saw Qin Yining slowed down and her body, they immediately assumed that she was plotting. Quickly! Stop pretending. Which one of you can take responsibility for delaying the Emperor's matters? The whip landed on Qin Yining's back. She had been beaten a lot along the way. There were whips, sticks, branches, and slaps. She forced herself to get used to it. But now, the defense in her heart was broken. The heavy whip landed on her back. It was so painful that her eyes turned black. Her legs gave way and she fell down. Wang Fei, how are you? Everyone exclaimed. Qin Yining's front and back were Bing Tang and Ji Yun. These people tied them to a rope. When she fell, Ji Yun and Bing Tang were the closest and were immediately pulled down. People in front and behind them also fell down. For a moment, the entire escort group was in chaos. Ji Yun screamed and hugged Qin Yining who had fallen down. She shouted mournfully, Wang Fei, Wang Fei. Bing Tang's face was also full of tears. She quickly checked Qin Yining's pulse. Xia Yu climbed up with difficulty. Her hands gripped the rope tightly. She shouted with tears in her eyes, Wang Yi fought for the country, but you captured Wang Ye's wife and child. Do you have any humanity? What did Wang Yi and Wang Fei do wrong? Along the way, you beat and scolded Wang Fei and humiliated her. Aren't you afraid that after you die, Wang Yi will put you in a pot of oil? Shut up. The Jingji guard stepped forward and kicked Xia Yu to the side. But Jing Zhi, Liao Zhibing, and the others would not agree. Even if their hands and arms were tied, they still resisted with their feet. For a moment, the streets were filled with horses neighing and people shouting. The sounds of fighting and insulting mixed together. The people in the capital were so scared that they retreated. There were also many people who felt a chill in their hearts when they saw this scene. The Taiten were driven out of Dezhou. Prince Zhongshuan's family immediately suffered such a situation. Wang Yi fought for the country, but he did not receive any praise or trust. Even when he led troops to rescue the emperor did not even let him enter the city gates. Now that the battle situation had stabilized slightly, the emperor urgently called Wang Yi back to the palace. Wang Yi wanted to continue fighting the Tatars, so the emperor captured Wang Fei and Wang Ye's family and abused them like this. Even if the rabbit was killed and the hound was cooked, it shouldn't be so ugly, right? For the emperor to do this, how could he live up to his conscience? The common people did not understand too much. After all, they did not have access to those secrets. But they maintained a kind heart. They knew right and wrong, and they knew the bottom line of a person's life. Normally, they might bicker with their neighbors over some small things, but when it came to the big picture, how could they not remember who had done something beneficial to the great Zhou dynasty? Seeing Wang Ye's family being abused like this, Wang Fei was so weak that she could not bear the burden. There was also the tragic cries of an infant in the carriage. Adding on the muffled sounds of punches hitting flesh when the Jingji guards beat the Wang Fu's family members. Was this still Jing? Was this still under the emperor's feet? Many common people almost didn't know where they were, and didn't know why they were here to watch such a farce. They didn't dare to say more because they were afraid of being implicated. But their respect for the emperor was gradually being wiped clean. All that was left was the shadow of the emperor abusing the family of a meritorious official. Stop, stop. All of you, stop. Go over there and arrest all the rebels. Everyone in the Pang family, immediately take them to the prison of the Ministry of Justice. The people from the warden's office of the 5 cities quickly arrived. A group of people charged into the crowd like Moses parting the sea. They separated the people who were fighting and punched and kicked Jing Jie and the Wang Fu's people. They tied them up tightly with ropes. Qin Yining was still on the ground and could not get up. The other party could only cut off the rope tied to Qin Yining and tied Ji Yun to Bing Tang. Qin Yining's hands and feet were tied up and thrown into the carriage. Go! Someone ordered and the group immediately moved forward. More than 100 people from the warden's office of the 5 cities came and isolated the common people who were watching on the street. Everyone looked in the direction where Qin Yining's carriage left. They were expressionless as if they were not thinking about anything. But who could completely understand the people's hearts? Imperial study. Li Qitian frowned as he looked at the 3 rows of secret agents kneeling in front of him. So, you brought back Prince Zhongshuan's family, but you also alarmed the common people in the city. Your Majesty, please calm down. At that time, Prince Zhongshuan's concubine suddenly fainted and delayed the process. In addition, the steward of Prince Zhongshuan's residence cried loudly, which aroused the common people's discussion. Everyone lowered their heads and didn't dare to look up at the emperor's expression. Li Qitian looked at this group of people, and the veins on his forehead were throbbing. Idiots, a bunch of idiots. Your Majesty, please calm down. Everyone hurriedly kowtowed. Li Qitian sneered, you only know how to ask me to calm down after messing up your mission. Did you not bring your brains with you when you went out? Do you need me to analyze everything in detail? After capturing the Qin clan and bringing them back, you would have used your brains and known that Buddha should have announced it to the public. But you are really good, you actually made things like this. Your Majesty, we know our mistakes. Please forgive us, Your Majesty. Li Qitian stood up and walked slowly with his hands behind his back. Xiong Jinshui and the other servants in the hall all held their breaths and restrained their thoughts. They didn't dare to let the emperor notice their existence. The secret agents also pressed their foreheads to the ground. Their bodies were covered in cold sweat as they waited for Li Qitian to deal with them. After a moment of silence, Li Qitian thought things through. Now that the famine in the south had been resolved, and the Titan in the north had been defeated, Pang Zhishi was guilty of disobeying the imperial edict, and his family was still in his hands. He didn't believe that with Qin Yining and the two new children, Pang Zhishi wouldn't surrender without a fight. In this world, the winner was the king, and the loser was the bandit. All history was written by the victors. As long as he captured Pang Zhishi, what was there to worry about? Reputation. Fear of being cursed. Those ignorant and foolish people, other than knowing how to talk, what else did they know how to do? Normally, they didn't care about what happened between the imperial family and the ministers. They only cared about whether they had enough to eat and whether they had a lot of money to spend. As long as he worked hard and changed the current situation, the people would naturally forget about irrelevant people and things. They would know who they should be loyal to. Moreover, no matter what, he was still the emperor. How much would these people dare to talk behind his back? Did they not want to live anymore? Thinking of this, Li Qitian's furrowed brows finally relaxed. Right now, he needed people, so he couldn't just dispose of all his subordinates. If he wanted to do something, he couldn't find suitable people. Thinking of this, Li Qitian said calmly, "Forget it. You can all get up." Everyone simply couldn't believe their ears. They looked at each other in dismay, then kowtowed to Li Qitian. "Thank you for your Majesty's kindness in not killing us." Everyone stood up with their hands hanging by their sides. Li Qitian said, "There will be no next time. If you do things without thinking and ruin my business, I will kick your heads like balls." "Yes." Everyone answered in unison. No matter what, they had passed this hurdle. Li Qitian then asked about what happened on the road, where and how they caught Qin Yining's group, and what happened along the way. He then asked seriously, "Did you find any letters from Pang Zhishi? Or did you find any news from Pang Zhishi?" Replying to your Majesty, "We didn't find any letters from Prince Zhongshuan." Presumably, even if there were, these important letters would have been hidden by the princess consort or simply destroyed. As for the account books, they were burned when we caught the eldest son's wife. We tried to snatch them from the brazier, but we didn't manage to get them. Li Qitian's expression became even more gloomy. Everyone was afraid. The leader of the secret agents lowered his head and pondered for a moment. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. "Your Majesty, actually, when we caught Prince Zhongshuan's consort, we encountered another strange thing." "Oh. What is it?" Li Qitian's attention was successfully diverted. Chapter 1145. Li Qitian looked down at the people in front of him suspiciously. He knew that these people were likely to talk nonsense in order to shirk responsibility. Seeing that the emperor was silent, the spies were afraid and hurriedly added to each other. "Your Majesty, we would never dare to deceive your Majesty. This matter is absolutely true." At that time, the group of people were not weak, but they did not carry weapons. Exactly. It can be seen that the group of people were secretly protecting Prince Zhongshuan's consort, but they were not familiar with each other and Prince Zhongshuan's people. Therefore, I suspect that the other party was most likely arranged by another party. Perhaps it was those people who were familiar with Prince Zhongshuan. They all knew that the emperor was the most suspicious person. As long as they mentioned that Pang Xiao might be colluding with someone, and that someone might be secretly eyeing the throne, the emperor would certainly not pay attention to them. Sure enough, Li Qitian lowered his eyes and pondered. He was surprised and doubtful. In today's imperial court, who would wallow in the mire with Pang Xiao? Thinking about it this way, didn't those generals privately call Pang Shao, god of war Wang Yi? Their worship of Pang Shao was almost to the point of blindness. It wasn't the first time that the imperial court had quarreled over matters related to Pang Shao. How could he have overlooked it? If these people were secretly colluding with Pang Shao, it would be fine. But what if they were bewitched by Pang Shao and joined forces to make a scene? Now that the external and internal troubles had just been resolved, if Pang Shao got the help of these people, wouldn't he take the opportunity to do something big? Li Qitian's heart was in his mouth. What about the people of the Pang family now? Replying to your majesty, they have been sent to the Ministry of Justice's prison according to your previous instructions. Think about it carefully. Are there any characteristics of the people you mentioned just now? Everyone's hearts were in their throats again. They had said these things to attract Li Qitian's attention, so that he would not pay attention to the uproar caused by their return to the capital. Who would have thought that they would find another trouble for themselves? The spies were afraid that if they couldn't answer, they would be punished by the emperor. They immediately racked their brains to recall the situation at that time. As a result, they were reminded of something. Oh, right. Your Majesty, those people are wearing the clothes of Dezhou's commoners, but they seem to be wearing Titan leather boots. After being reminded, a few people who had fought with that group of people that day remembered some details. They nodded and said with certainty, "Yes, Your Majesty, those people were indeed wearing Tatter's cowhide boots." That kind of cowhide is not something that Dezhou can have, but it is a specialty of the Titan grassland. They must be Tatters who have sneaked in. Li Qitian's eyes darkened, and he said word by word, "Chew, chew, chew." Yes. Everyone lowered their heads and answered in a deep voice. Li Qitian paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. After a moment, he laughed mockingly. How interesting. I thought that Prince Zhongshuan was something, wholeheartedly fighting against the Tatters, even going against the imperial edict. I didn't expect him to be so sanctimonious. On the surface, he is a hero fighting against the Tatters, but he is secretly colluding with the Titans. Everyone was a little flustered when they heard this, because they knew the consequences of Li Qitian causing such a misunderstanding. However, that group of people were indeed wearing Titan cowhide boots. This was an indisputable fact. Although the spies were loyal to Li Qitian, they admired Pang Shao very much. If they said that Pang Shao was colluding with the Titan, wouldn't their country be destroyed? Come. Send an imperial edict to summon Prince Zhongshuan back to the capital to report on his work. Yes, Your Majesty. Everyone saluted in unison. The spies heaved a sigh of relief. Just as they were about to leave, Li Qitian said, "In addition, keep an eye on the Qin clan. Bring out Pang Zhishi's child alone. I will personally go back and ask what kind of secret deal they made with the Titan." Yes, Your Majesty. Everyone saluted again. Percent in the dead of winter, the dungeon was even gloomier than usual. The air was filled with a rotten and moldy smell. At the end of the corridor, there was a small bucket window that didn't let in much light. The thick wooden bars separated Qin Yining from the rest of the people. Bing Tang, Ji Yun, and Ziyuan were locked together with the wet nurse and the children. The imperial bodyguards were trapped like dumplings and locked in the position furthest away from them. They could only vaguely see their figures. The wet nurse hugged brother Xian and sister Yun and gently coaxed them. It wasn't easy for her to coax the children to sleep. Qin Yining leaned weakly against the wall. His hands were tied behind his back. His long hair was messy, his cheeks were dirty, and the corners of his lips were stained with blood. A pair of bright eyes watched the children fall asleep. Only then did he quietly sigh in relief, showing a bit of exhaustion. "Princess, how are you?" Bing Tang grabbed the wooden bars with both hands and stretched his neck to look in the direction of Qin Yining, who was one cell away. Qin Yining shook his head. With his back leaning against the moldy straw, he said weakly, I'm fine, I'm fine. You guys take good care of the children. Ji Yun and Bing Tang both nodded. The wet nurse also hugged the young master and young miss tightly in her arms. Princess, don't worry. You saved the lives of this servant's entire family. Even if this servant has to sacrifice my life, I won't let anything happen to the young master and young miss. Qin Yining smiled bitterly. The corner of his lips was torn, and a trace of blood dripped down. What did I do? Wang Yi and I went to the disaster relief area to do what we should do, but now we've implicated you. If I didn't choose you to be the wet nurse in the Fu, you wouldn't have become prisoners today. In the end, I've implicated you. Princess, don't say that. That's right, Princess. If we didn't come to the Fu to be the wet nurse that day, we wouldn't have been able to survive at home. Princess saved the lives of our family and gave us jobs. She gave us money to support the old and young at home. We can't thank Princess enough. Princess is kind and never mistreats the servants. We eat and dress well with Princess. There's no reason for us to be thick-skinned when we're enjoying life. Now that we've met with disaster, if we blame you for implicating us, then what kind of people would we be? The other wet nurse was the most stupid, but she also nodded in agreement. These two women in their prime had been tortured by life. They looked like they were almost 40 years old, but the sincere smiles on their faces made them look even more gentle and beautiful. Qin Yining felt a lot more at ease. He smiled and said, being able to receive your help is my and Wang Ye's good fortune. If I can escape alive in the future, I'll thank you properly. Everyone shook their heads. Princess, don't worry. You and Wang Yi will be fine. However, even though they said that, they still felt bad in their hearts. Because they had seen with their own eyes how the emperor treated the families of the meritorious officials. They also knew that after the Tatars were driven out, the emperor summoned Wang Yi back to the capital. When all these things were connected together, anyone with a bit of intelligence would be able to understand the cause and effect of all this. Wasn't it because the emperor was afraid of the meritorious officials? They didn't have much contact with Wang Yi, but ever since they followed Princess and took care of the young master and young miss, they had been taken care of by Princess. Such good women had been implicated because of this matter. The men were fighting outside, risking their lives to protect the country, but the women and children were thrown into prison with an uncertain future. What kind of irony was this? Qin Yining tiredly closed his eyes. He wanted to take advantage of this time to sleep. Just at this time, there was the sound of the door opening and the sound of metal chains sliding. Then, the iron door was pushed open with a creak, and a burst of disorderly footsteps came in, echoing in the long and gloomy corridor. A group of people quickly walked down the corridor towards the innermost side. Xia Yu and the others couldn't help but stand up. One by one, they looked inside. However, they were in prison and couldn't use their strength. They could only huddle together and stretch their necks to try and see in Qin Yining's direction. Under the lead of the jailer, the spy walked quickly to Qin Yining's cell and stood still. When the jailer opened the door of Qin Yining's cell, the spy waved his hand casually to the jailer. The jailer retreated a few steps and stood in the corner. Qin Yining narrowed his eyes and looked at the person in front of him through his hair. He recognized that this was the person who had made the decision to bring them back. Even the arrogant Jingji guards were respectful to this person. He must be Li Qitian's trusted aide. The other did not speak, so Qin Yining also did not speak. He quietly sat in his spot and waited. The secret agent laughed. Everyone says that the Prince Zhongshuan's consort comes from the Qin clan and is the daughter of the wise Panin. She is the most beautiful woman in the capital. Today, it seems that it is true. His voice was not loud, but the prison of the Ministry of Justice was only so big, and the prison was quite spacious. The surrounding walls echoed quite a bit, and such frivolous words were immediately heard clearly by everyone. Presumptuous. You cannot be rude to the Wang Fei. Dog thief, if you have the skills, come at us. Xia Yu and the others were furious. However, they were tightly bound and could not do anything. They could only anxiously shout with their eyes wide open. Qin Yining was very calm. He looked at the incomer in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. The secret agent laughed. I have never seen a woman like you. You are clearly a weak woman, but you are full of stubbornness. Even the whips and beatings along the way were not able to subdue you. He pushed open the door and entered the cell. He squatted down in front of Qin Yining and lifted her messy long hair with one hand. He looked at her starry eyes and her face that was still delicate and beautiful even though it was dirty. His voice was slightly intoxicated. You were born with this kind of appearance. If you were willing to make good use of it, would you have suffered so much on the way here? His finger reached out towards the whip mark on Qin Yining's neck. Qin Yining tilted her head and dodged his hand. You came here by imperial decree. What orders does your majesty have? With one sentence, the secret agent's hand stopped in midair and slowly fell down. He shook his head and sneered, you really know how to be a party pooper. Yes, I came here by imperial decree. You shouldn't want to know your majesty's orders. Qin Yining pursed her pale lips. There was still no color on her lips. The trace of blood at the corner of her lips made her cheeks look extremely pale. The secret agent sighed and said, Your Majesty has ordered me to take away your 2 children. Children, if you are willing to agree to my request and let me get close to you, I will treat your 2 children well. Otherwise, I cannot guarantee that they will live to see your Majesty. As he spoke, he raised his hand again and moved closer to Qin Yining's face. Qin Yining's beautiful eyes widened and she gritted her teeth. She was meat on the chopping block. Since she was captured, she knew that Sister Yun and Brother Xian would definitely be taken away. If she became hostages, Li Qitian would definitely think that she was not as important as the 2 children. Chapter 1146. The children are still young. They're only 3 months old. They can't leave, but your Majesty gave the order. The spy's hand caressed Qin Yining's face back and forth. His eyes gradually became heated and his voice trembled with excitement. Your Majesty asked me to bring the 2 children into the palace. As you said, they're only 3 months old. It's freezing outside. I can't guarantee their safety on the road, Princess Consort. Qin Yining pursed her pale lips. After a moment, she said, If you do anything to them, you won't be able to answer to the Emperor, right? When the time comes, will the Emperor let you off? Do you know what the Emperor wants us to do? Our lives are in danger, but the Emperor wants to see our lives used on the edge of a knife. Is that so? The spy said, When you put it that way, it makes sense. Anyway, they're twins. It's enough to leave a boy behind. As for a girl, her body is naturally weaker. She can't withstand the wind and snow in the north. Qin Yining's pupils shrank. She was speechless. Ji Yun gritted her teeth and roared, You despicable person. The wet nurses hugged the 2 children even tighter. Their eyes were full of vigilance. Xia Yu, Jingzhe, Master Zhong, and the others wanted to break out of the cage and fight the spy to the death. Everyone cursed, despicable person, taking advantage of other people's difficulties. What kind of man are you? Their angry curses echoed in the prison cell. But the spy had a smile on his face. He stared at Qin Yining's pretty face with burning eyes and played with her long hair. So, what do you think? Qin Yining closed her eyes. She didn't dare to take the risk. She knew that Li Qitian would use her children to threaten Pang Xiao. In a man's heart, children were naturally more important than his wife. But she couldn't be sure if the person in front of her would understand this logic and secretly kill her children. She really did not dare to gamble. She could not lose either brother Xian or sister Yun. Alright, Qin Yining suddenly opened his eyes, and there seemed to be a cold glint in his eyes. But I don't want to be here. There are too many people here. The spy was overjoyed and laughed heartily. Good, good, good. No matter what, there needs to be a bed to be worthy of Wang Fei's noble status. With this, does it mean that Zhongshan Qin Wang and I are colleagues? As he spoke, he lifted Qin Yining's collar and walked out with her in his arms. He ordered the jailer of the Ministry of Justice's prison, "Go, make room for me." Hey! The jailer chuckled as he led the spy out of the room. Your Highness. Princess Consort. Ji Yun, Bing Tang, and the other womenfolk cried in despair. Xia Yu and the others' eyes were crimson red. Their angry roars echoed throughout the entire prison. But they were tied up and could not do anything. They had endured being whipped and insulted on the way here. But now, because of their lack of protection, Wang Fei was going to accompany such a despicable person. How could they endure it? How could they explain it to Wang Yi? This old one is ashamed to face Wang Yi, ashamed to face Wang Yi. Xia Yu's tears flowed down his old face as he sighed towards the sky. Liao Zhibing gritted his teeth and said, "We have to think of a way. Even if we have to atone for our crimes, we have to bring Wang Fei, the young master, and young miss out of here before we die." Right. Everyone agreed and racked their brains. At this time, the secret agent had already turned a corner with Qin Yining's shoulder and arrived at a single cell. This cell had an iron door and only a small window was opened at the bottom. It seemed like it was used to deliver food. The jailer took out a key and opened the door. He smiled and said, "Master Nye, this is the only single cell in our prison. Please make do with it. Although we can't block out the sound, at least those people can't see us." How could the secret agent care about anything else at this time? He could not wait any longer. He pushed open the door and pushed Qin Yining inside. There was a wooden bed in the narrow cell. The bed was covered in moldy straw. There was a large window in the wall that reflected the gray sky of a winter afternoon. A thin layer of snow floated down. Qin Yining was pressed onto the wooden bed by the secret agent. Her hands were tied behind her back. She twisted her body and her soft voice carried a bit of panting. You have to let go of my hands first. This is too uncomfortable." The secret agent was already kissing her neck. He gave a rough and cold laugh. "Don't even think about it. It's fine as long as your legs aren't tied up. I don't trust you." Then, the sound of silk ripping could be heard in the cell. The walls of this gloomy prison were damp and were not soundproof at all. Everything could be heard clearly. Everyone wanted to speak to block out the sound, but they didn't know what to say. Bing Tang's eyes were swollen like walnuts from crying. She covered her mouth and sobbed, muttering, "What to do? This is a dead end, this is a dead end." With Wang Yi and Wang Fei's relationship, after this, could Wang Fei still live? The wet nurse was sobbing as she hugged her child. She was both sad and moved. A mother was strong, a mother was strong. Even if she could not throw away her bottom line, she could throw it away for her child. Just as everyone was at a loss and in despair, a man's scream came from the distance. Then, it was followed by disorderly curses that were unbearable to the ear. Let go, you! Let! The jailer had been eavesdropping outside. Hearing that something was wrong, he quickly charged in. When he pulled open the metal door, he saw the woman with her hands tied behind her straddling the half-clothed man. She was like a wild wolf as she viciously bit the man's neck. The man's carotid artery was torn by her sharp canine teeth and blood flowed out. The woman's face and body were covered in blood, but she still tightly bit his neck and did not let go. The spy pushed her with his hands and punched her head. Qin Yining endured it and refused to let go. She could kill her today. If she died, she could let the world know how the emperor treated the family of a meritorious official. At that time, her children and the people around her might still have a chance to be saved. But if she couldn't kill her, she would take this slut's life. How could she allow someone who might harm her children to live in this world? Since he could think of such a crooked method for the emperor, Li Qitian, birds of a feather flocked together. She couldn't see that this person was bad, so she would help Li Qitian clean up the family. The smell of blood filled her nose. Qin Yining didn't know how much blood she had swallowed. Even her hair was soaked in blood. The spy could only scream miserably. The jailer hurriedly came forward to pull Qin Yining away, but the scene was too frightening. Even a man like him was scared stiff by the bloody scene, but this woman still refused to let go. In the end, he pulled her hair and pulled her away, only to see that the woman was still holding a piece of flesh in her mouth. Her head and face were covered in blood, and only the whites of her eyes were particularly bright under the dim light. She looked at him with an evil smile, and spat out the piece of flesh with a "peh" sound. At this time, the spy's whole body was convulsing and he was holding his neck. Blood was spurting out from between his fingers. He was like a stranded fish, widening his eyes and opening his mouth, but to no avail. Go. Tell your emperor. Qin Yining's hands were still tied. She jumped to the ground with her long legs. The jailer was scared by her bright eyes that were covered in blood and that she was so bloody that he took a step back. Tell him that the people he sent didn't listen to orders and wanted to kill important hostages. I've already killed them. Her voice, which had always been low and gentle, seemed to have become more metallic after being nourished by human blood. It echoed in the silent prison cell. Tell your emperor again. If he wants to negotiate, then negotiate. If he wants to use us as hostages, we're willing to cooperate. My 2 children and I can only die together. If he wants to kill any one of us, I'll make him waste his efforts. He won't even need a single hostage. Her resolute tone was full of the will to die. At worst, she would fight to the death. If she and her children weren't there to hold them back, Pang Xiao wouldn't be so timid. If news of their death spread, with Pang Xiao's usually affectionate personality, he might not even fight with the Taiten and Shui Jun would directly come back to the capital. This was definitely not what Li Qitian wanted to see. Li Qitian would definitely think of a way to make the most of them as hostages. The spy's legs bounced a few times. His eyes were wide open as he clutched his collar tightly and stopped moving. In the prison cell filled with blood and the smell of blood, the jailer came back to his senses in a daze. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva and nodded frantically. Qin Yining walked out of the door. The jailer was so scared that he took a step back. He hesitated for a moment before he dared to step forward and follow her to the cell where she was originally locked up. Xiaoyu, Bing Tang, and the others had already heard the noise. They all stretched their necks to look outside. When they saw Qin Yining covered in blood, they gasped. They also saw that her clothes were slightly open at the collar and nothing else was wrong. They secretly sighed in relief. Wang Fei. Bing Tang choked with sobs. Qin Yining passed by their cell and smiled comfortingly. However, the smile of a person whose face was covered in blood only gave off an eerie and terrifying feeling. It didn't have any comforting effect at all. Don't worry. I've bitten that bitch to death. Bitten to death. Yes. The jailer pushed Qin Yining into the cell door. His hands quickly locked the cell door as if he was afraid of a ferocious beast running out to bite people. Then, he quickly ran out and called for his colleagues in the cell next door to help. He even shouted loudly, "Not good. Not good. Wang Fei has bitten Master Nia to death." Bing Tang, Ji Yun, and the others were all squeezed to Qin Yining's side. They looked at Qin Yining across the cell. "Wang Fei, how are you?" Qin Yining smiled. She sat tiredly on the moldy straw. Only then did she feel her vision turn black. Her entire body hurt, especially her head. She felt dizzy just by moving. It must be because the person called Master Nia hit her too hard when he resisted. "I'm fine. I won't die." Qin Yining closed her eyes and leaned her head against the cold wall. She muttered, "After this mess, I want to see who dares to have any evil thoughts." Li Qitian wants a live hostage to threaten Pang Zhishi to return to the capital. If Pang Zhishi knows about our deaths, she won't just return to the capital to report on her work. Instead, she will bring her soldiers and horses to fight back. Isn't Li Qitian afraid of soldiers who have just killed the Tatars and seen blood? Ha! Although she said it with a firm tone, her battered appearance, which was covered in blood, didn't seem to be the case at all. A girl almost lost her virginity. She personally bit down on someone's throat and was sprayed with warm blood all over her body. How desperate must she be to do this? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.